in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, April 15th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 8 degrees. In Smiths Falls, it's 9. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. New shipments of Moderna vaccine are currently delayed right across Canada. Public health officials in Ottawa have started weighing their options now for solutions before having to cancel any vaccine appointments. Here's City News reporter Eric O'Brien.
According to Anthony DeMonte, the city's general manager of emergency and protective services, considering the current COVID-19 situation in the city, he says it's frustrating that they're now considering the nightmare possibility of having to cancel first vaccine appointments.
The machine is there, it's running, we're getting vaccinations done, and here unfortunately we go again perhaps with a lull in vaccine. So that's very frustrating too for the team, and stopping and going is probably the worst thing you want. You want the machine to continue running and then you continue to increase it.
DeMonte says city staff are working diligently right now to ensure that no disruptions in the rollout actually occurs. He says city staff are currently weighing every option. Eric O'Brien, City News.
City News time, 9:01, and now your forecast with weather specialist Denise Andriacci.
An unsettled stretch of weather with cooler temperatures for Smiths Falls and Ottawa. 10 to 15 millimeters of rain expected today, and a little bit of rain expected Friday through the weekend as well. Daytime highs are going to be cooler than we've been used to. It's been a gorgeous stretch of weather the last couple of days, but daytime highs today near 10 degrees.
And right now, some scattered light rain in the region, 9 degrees in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls. With Ontario schools switching over to remote learning and no specified end date to that, starting on Monday, the Upper Canada District Board Director of Education is not surprised. Stephen Sliwa tells City News there isn't much concern over getting ready thanks to some past experience.
This is really our second time. The first official time was last spring, and then the second opportunity was this past January. We're certainly becoming more acquainted with what we have to do, and the lag will be substantially less.
He says the time to transition will still be needed, adding that he understands how quickly things can change and evolve right now since the province is at a very difficult stage in this pandemic. Another major concern, the Ontario Medical Association worried about the state of mental health of children during this pandemic.
Dr. Dan Rosenfield at Toronto's Hospital for Sick Children says there's a sharp increase in intentional ingestion-related emergency room visits for teens. Those are sometimes indicative of suicide attempts. He adds that boredom and experimentation are other reasons teens may intentionally ingest dangerous substances. Dr. Saba Merchant of Vaughan, Ontario says she's noticed skyrocketing cases of anxiety, depression, and obsessions. Roger Ward, The Canadian Press.
City News time, 9:03. An Ottawa teen is facing a number of charges after an incident last night involving a weapon. Police responded to a call just after 9 o'clock. A man uttering threats and pointing a gun at another near the Saint Laurent shopping centre. The weapon was later determined to be a BB gun. 18-year-old Michael Spafford has been charged with uttering threats and various weapons offenses. He will be appearing in court later today. This week's Communist Party Congress in Cuba could be the last with a Castro at the helm of the island's all-powerful political institution. 6 years after the death of Fidel Castro, brother Raul is being watched to see if he fulfills a commitment to give up reins of the only political organization permitted on the Caribbean island. I'm Andrew Boyle. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Inform your opinion.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Just remember, in case you're having a bad day, at least you're not Will Amos. Willie to his friends. Note to self, do not get changed in front of a computer screen. Ever. Good morning. Welcome to the Rob Snow Show. Great program ahead. It promises to be a very busy news day. Randall Denley is going to join us in just a few minutes from now, columnist for both the Ottawa Citizen and the National Post. And He's been covering the Ford government since day one. We're going to get into all the twists and the turns in Ford Nation lately. Randall's latest column for the Post was about the decision to keep the schools closed after this week's break. Keep the schools closed for an indefinite period of time. So we'll get into that. But there's also lots of buzz today that more restrictions could be on the way. Cabinet ministers in the Ford government are supposed to meet today, and according to Brian Lilly in a series of tweets, my friend Brian Lilly of the Sun newspapers, lots of things are in the mix up for debate and discussion, including the possibility of a curfew, a Quebec-style curfew. But not just that. Again, according to Brian Lilly, talk of extending the current stay-at-home order beyond its original expiry date, which I believe is the 5th of May, simply extending it. But if the stay-at-home order really isn't accomplishing much, it's hard to see what extending it would do. But anyway, it's up for discussion, apparently. They might also look at what businesses are really, essential. Are there businesses operating right now, people going to work to those businesses right now who really shouldn't be going to work, and those businesses don't really need to be open? For example, Brian tweeted last night there's some talk about closing construction sites for a few weeks. And also ramping up enforcement. Really and seriously deploying, for example, the OPP to deal with people who simply refuse to follow the rules that are in effect right now. So we're going to get into all of this with columnist and author Randall Denley when he joins us. And I know we talked a lot about this yesterday, but I would like nothing more than to get right back into it with you again this morning. Lockdowns, shutdowns, stay-at-home orders, state of emergency, curfews, contra rising case counts, hospitals under increasing strain, ICU admissions well beyond anything we've seen before. The front page of the Citizen today. Things could go very badly in the next few weeks. Things could go very badly in the next few weeks. It came out of a very stark briefing yesterday by our Deputy Chief Medical Officer of Health here in the city of Ottawa. And, we've been told. And the numbers, don't the numbers seem to back it up? This wave of the pandemic is the worst one yet. Let's hope it's the last one. But it's the worst one. We've never seen anything like it before. As bad as it's ever been. And we're constantly warned it might only get worse from here. So if that's the case, ladies and gentlemen, do we need restrictions that are like nothing we've seen before? Restrictions that reflect the severity of the situation. I'll leave that with you. Pause, reflect, deep breaths. Go to your happy place. Okay. Join me in the happy place. And then feel free to give me a call during the talkback hour. We'll do that every morning. We do it every morning between 10 and 11 o'clock. An hour of call-in radio. If you ask me, I would tell you it's the hottest hour of talk radio in town. David, you agree? Yeah, David agrees. Take part in it, okay? Be part of the discussion. Be part of the debate. Okay? It's your hour. 750-1310 is the call-in line. 750-1310. 613-750-1310. You can always drop me an email. therobsnowshow@ottawa.citynews.ca. Now, if you don't want to talk about COVID, maybe you're all talked out about it. Maybe you're sick of hearing about it. I wouldn't blame you. There's something else big in the mix. Ladies and gentlemen, you bet there is. Whew, smoking hot. Carbon tax. Carbon tax. Not just any carbon tax. A conservative carbon tax. There are competing news stories and a major announcement on the way. from Erin O'Toole, leader of Canada's Conservative Party. He is going to reveal the Conservative Party's climate plan for the upcoming election campaign, whenever that happens to be. And he's going to do that, the great reveal, at 11 o'clock this morning. And I will make this prediction. This announcement will be made at 11 o'clock this morning. It will be criticized, demonized, and largely dismissed as inadequate by noon. Nevertheless, the public broadcaster reports this morning, and it claims to have an advanced copy of the plan, a leaked copy of the plan. CBC News reports Erin O'Toole will have, as part of his election platform, a carbon tax that you will pay every time you fill your vehicle with gasoline, or whenever you pay whatever fuel bill you have to pay, propane, natural gas, whatever. And it's going to start out, this is the CBC starts going to start out at $20 a ton and go up to $50 a ton and $1 more. I remember when Liberals said it would never go higher than $50, and now $50 has become $170 a ton. But they're Liberals. Conservatives would never do something like that. And here's the other twist, okay? You know, the Liberals have the Climate Action Incentive Program. That's the rebate that people can get at tax time. That would go bye-bye, according to this story from the public broadcaster. And under a conservative carbon tax scheme, whatever you pay in carbon tax, you would get money back put into something called a green savings fund. Every Canadian would have a green savings fund. And you would get, seriously, this is the idea, okay? I guess it would be like a green debit card. I don't know. Or run like Interact. Maybe run by Interact by the sounds of things. Seriously. A green savings fund, and whatever money is in your green savings fund, you could only spend it on green things so you can lead a greener life thanks to their green savings fund. Now, that's according to the CBC this morning. That is not what is being reported by the National Post. The National Post says the Conservative plan is to actually get rid of the carbon tax that consumers pay, whatever we pay for on a carbon tax on a liter of gas or a liter of diesel, or they fill a propane tank, Enbridge bill, whatever that is, scrap that, but have a carbon tax on large emitters. That's what the National Post says O'Toole is going to announce this morning. So what news outlet has it right? Well, we'll all have to wait. We'll all have to wait until 11 o'clock when all will be revealed. My question for you is whether it's a carbon tax on consumers or a carbon tax on big industrial emitters that eventually consumers will pay for. My question for you is, do you want the Conservative Party to be promising any kind of carbon tax at all? It seems to me the party's new leadership has come to the conclusion we have to put something in the window for voters to try and convince voters that Conservatives, we really do take the climate crisis, the climate emergency, we really do take it seriously. We don't want to be on Greta's bad side. Or nobody under the age of 35 will ever vote for us. We have to have something that says carbon tax in our election platform. Now, I'm not really a big believer in that strategy. I have said if I was the Conservative leader, I wouldn't spend 5 minutes talking about carbon taxes. Climate crisis, climate emergency. No. You will not outbid the Liberals as eco warriors. But it seems to me that's what they're going to do. And the election call could come within a few weeks. So this is what they're going to do today. it's a big deal. It's a big moment for the party, especially if the CBC story is right. And there really is going to be a promise of a Conservative carbon tax on consumer fuels. But it's a big story that they're talking favorably about carbon taxes at all, if that's the case. And I want to know how you feel about that. Is that a step in the right direction for the Conservative Party of Canada, or more evidence that Erin O'Toole is not really true blue? We will have his announcement and instant analysis this morning on The Rob Snow Show on City News.
Everyone's got their own little dreams. I want to write the next novel. I want to write a screenplay, which I still want to do. So owning my own business is something I've always in the back of your mind. Oh yeah, that'd be really cool to try and do. I end up lost my job that I had for 20 years. And I found myself with nothing. Trying to figure out what am I going to do now. I'm mid-40s and, I got a lot of different experience, mainly in retail. So I figured, you know what, let's try to give this a go. I didn't really have any money. I started up with the little website. We went with that, and then it's kind of just grown from there. I have such a passion for this, it's not even work for me. This is a hobby that I get to, thankfully make a living off of. When you walk in, you're going to be overwhelmed, I think, with all the amount of licensed product that we have. I only sell licensed product. I don't sell anything no name or anything. Everything is 100% officially licensed, depending on the franchise. So I like to support a lot of different franchises, a lot of pop culture. So I do have a little bit of music, vinyl, Star Trek, Star Wars, Marvel, DC, Doctor Who, Game of Thrones, you name it, there's probably something around. Or if I don't have it, you let me know and I'll do whatever I can to, try and find it for you. I do some comic books. A lot of the interesting things that I do are items that you just don't find anywhere else. I probably have the best selection of pop culture cookbooks. So cookbooks from Walking Dead and Downton Abbey and Orange is the New Black, Hannibal, Marvel, Wonder Woman. I've got the best selection of Star Trek ships in the city. Well, actually, I've got the best selection in the country. I'm the only retailer in Canada that deals directly with the company Eagle Moths. I've got the best variety of Pop Funko figures within the city. I got the best prices, hands down. Even some of my action figures that I sell that are available at Walmart and Toys R Us, I'm cheaper than them, which is a lot of times you don't realize it. So even that small business can offer you a great value.
Strong opinions.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcoming back to City News this morning, author and post-media columnist Randall Denley. Good morning, Randall Denley.
Morning, Rob.
Very nice to hear from you. What did you think about the Ford government's decision to keep schools closed after the break is over?
Well, so they pulled the emergency brake on that one, didn't they?
Yes.
One day, Stephen Lecce says, yep, the education minister, schools are going to be opening up. Very next day, no, we need to change. Schools will be closed. I thought it was a very odd and confusing situation because they've argued consistently throughout that schools are safe. And they're still saying schools are safe. But we have to close them. Well, why do we have to close them? Well, because, kids are at home during the March break, so they're going to be picking up a lot of COVID from the community. So we wouldn't want them bringing that into the schools. Okay, so what you're really saying is, so they're going to get more COVID in the community, than they have been in the schools up until the March break. And, well, why do we have the April break it is now? Why do we have the break anyway? They also said, well, we knew Friday, Saturday that we were going to have to close schools. Okay, so if we have to close the schools to keep the kids from bringing the community transmission in, why didn't we just cancel the break?
Why didn't we cancel the break? Yeah.
Rather than on day one of the break saying, well, this break is just so dangerous, we need to react and do something. Well, they're the ones who said, let's have the break. It would have been a lot smarter, I think, and easier to say, if on Friday you felt that the break was too dangerous, cancel the break. But the implications of closing schools are just ripple through everywhere. People's jobs, their home life, kids' mental health, kids' education, and it's been a terribly wobbly year for kids already. It's great to say, well, we're just going to transition to online learning. You don't hear much good about online learning. It might work for some kids, but it really isn't doing much for most of them, I don't think. So, and Rob, to me, the worst part of this was there's no indication of what it would take to get them open again. Well, when they're safe now, but when they're again safe, then we'll open them. There wasn't an endpoint put on this or some kind of health indicators that, well, when we reach these kind of numbers, we can reopen them. So I think parents would be smart just to say, well, that's it, the school year's over for in-person learning. They're not opening again, and I'm sure they won't.
You don't think they're going to open schools again?
I don't see it.
Do you think they're closed for the rest of the year?
Yep.
Wow.
No, we're already going to be running into May at a minimum.
Yeah.
And clearly the government has moved into the why take a chance on anything mode right now, and maybe they should, but that's the mode they're in. So I don't see them being in a hurry to open up anything now because they're in a major panic over the increase in caseloads and all the bad things that are happening. So the idea of saying again to people, it's not so bad, you can do this or you can do that, I don't think it's going to fly, and they're not going to do it.
Wow, what a lost year it is then.
No, it is. I mean, it is almost totally lost. And last year was lost, too. How do these kids ever catch up, really?
Yeah. There is this narrative out there. I'd like to know what you think, that this is kind of a step toward maybe institutionalizing online learning, give it some permanence.
Yeah, that would be exceptionally unpopular. They had I think it's a narrative that's being driven by the teachers' unions, primarily because they hate it for a variety of reasons. But, what the government had settled on before the pandemic was 2 classes in secondary school over a period of 4 years would be online. I have no problem with that. You can certainly theoretically develop a better online course if you take the time to do it properly.
Right.
Than what people would get across the broad spectrum. And part of the problem we have in secondary schools, is in smaller schools in particular, there aren't enough kids to offer a full range of classes. So if you really wanted that particular history course, well, we don't have it in our school. Well, that would be your online course. And so I think there's nothing wrong with it. But 100% online, month after month after month, I mean, it's terrible for socialization, and really you're asking an awful lot of kids and parents to say, oh yeah, a kid is going to sit at home with all the distractions around them, and young children too, in front of a screen, and they're going to learn something. And it's very difficult for teachers to engage them online too. If you're in person with a student in a class and they're kind of looking out the window and dreaming, you can address that with them directly. But if they're doing it at home, well, they're doing it. There's nothing you can do about it. So it's been a really, really tough year for kids. But I think, what this comes back to again is the failure to balance risk versus reward, because there's a big price to be paid for closing schools. I'm not sure the gain balances out, and in particular because we know that when kids were home over Christmas, when kids were home over Easter, COVID cases among kids spiked. Because they're out in the neighborhood playing with friends, not wearing masks, doing what they do, completely unstructured. At least in schools, there's some kind of structure. So I think I won't be surprised if we see more cases in kids because they're at home than we would have if they were in schools.
Right. Yeah. Okay. What do you think is on the way? Lots of speculation about this cabinet meeting today. I mean, do you think we could get a curfew, for example?
Well, Ford's been dead set against that, but he's been dead set against a lot of other things he's ultimately done as well. So I guess I'd be hard-pressed to know what it would accomplish. Now, if a curfew is like what Ottawa's talking about, public parks after 8 o'clock, then okay, it's dark, it's a park. It's not really family time, it's party time. So I have no problem with that.
Okay.
But a general curfew, what does that accomplish? Because we have all these sort of semi-essential industries and businesses still running. People have been at work all day, exposed to all kinds of people. But hey, make sure you're at home by 8 o'clock. Really, what is that going to do? And where are they going to go anyways? It's not like we're keeping them out of the bars. All that's closed. They haven't given enough time now for the big shutdown and the school closure to show an effect, because it's a 2-week lag period, of course. Whatever was in the system's in the system. We're only halfway there. So to me, to add more things on top of this now would just be another sign that, oh my God, it's a disaster. Just throw everything at it. It doesn't matter whether it makes any sense. I think life is tough enough for people right now without adding more restrictions.
Okay. Our correspondent from City News, Cynthia Mulligan, just tweeting another delay for Moderna for Ontario. 500,000 doses that were supposed to arrive April 19th. Not expected until May 3rd. Senior government source says it will pose a logistical challenge and could disrupt the rollout further. Ooh, okay. But doses and freezers, Randall. Doses and freezers, right?
Yeah, that by federal calculation is just a couple of days. Or weeks, whatever. But it won't be a problem at all, except for the people who are going to get vaccines, and now they won't. I'm writing today for the National Post about the whole vaccination fuss that's going on in Ontario right now. And to me, we're missing the point talking about, hey, what's happening in this postal code? When the real story is that Ontario is vaccinating 100,000 people a day, which is great. But they could be vaccinating 150,000 people a day if they had the supply. So every day that goes by, that's 50,000 people who aren't getting protection that they could be getting. And, delays like this Moderna one would just make that much worse. But we're fussing about this vaccination plan in Ontario like it's so confusing. It's just a disaster. It's actually working very effectively.
Okay.
And the supply that's holding it back. That's the big issue. People are saying, well, why can't this group get it right now? OC transport workers, right now. Teachers, right now. Everybody wants it right now. Well, there just isn't enough vaccine to do that. And they've already booked 2.8 million future appointments. So unless you're going to start canceling those people just because you've changed your mind, we just can't help all these groups that have a perfectly good case to be vaccinated. So to me, that's still the biggest story in the whole vaccination zone is supply. And I know the federal government's peddling furiously to say, look, we're giving it out now at a rate that's second in the G7. It's kind of like the team that's last place in the league say, but we're on a 3-game win streak. Okay, good for you. How do the standings look?
Right. Okay. Missed the playoffs.
Yeah.
But, okay, Randall, great to hear from you this week. Look forward to your column, your latest one for the National Post.
Okay.
Thank you again, Randall Denley, Post media columnist and author. 9:29. This is City News.
news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, April 15th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now, with some scattered light rain in the region, 9 degrees in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news this hour. City News is quoting a senior government source saying a delayed Moderna shipment for Ontario, rescheduled to next Monday, has been further delayed now to May 3rd. A senior government source says this is going to pose a logistical challenge. Procurement Minister Anita Anand says she is working on nailing down supplies of vaccine booster shots if they are needed next year. Many experts believe additional boosters are going to be necessary either to remind our immune systems what it needs to do or protect against new variants of COVID. Health Canada has initiated a plan to authorize boosters without the same extensive testing required as the original vaccine would. It would be similar to how flu shots are authorized every year. Green Party of Canada Diversity Coordinator has written a scathing condemnation of high-ranking officials in the party who deny there is discrimination. The Toronto Star reporting on an internal discord affecting Anna May Paul, the first black leader of a major political party. In a lengthy email sent Monday to dozens of party officials, Zara Mitra accused party officials unnamed of causing irreparable harm by denying reports about internal party problems. All volunteer shifts at the Ottawa Food Bank have been cancelled at their warehouse. COVID pandemic affecting the case count there. It comes at a time when the food bank has had its busiest month in March since this pandemic began. City News Time, 9:33. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
So you want to be a politician, do you? Maybe run as a candidate for a political party in an election? Well, you should ask yourself, could you pass the vetting process? Political parties have to go to extraordinary lengths now to vet potential candidates for elections, and it's well beyond the typical background check. It's a great pleasure to have back on City News Richard Mahoney, Managing Director, McMillan Vantage Policy Group. Richard has run for office. He has been a vetted candidate, and he has worked on developing policies for vetting candidates for office. And he joins me now. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm not bad at all.
Wonderful, wonderful. Glad to hear it. Traditionally, say, back in the day, how would you vet a candidate? Typically, what would people go through?
So, let's say back before the last 25 or 30 years, when I first came in contact with this, I was campaign chair in Ontario for the Ontario Liberal Party in 1995. It was very informal, Rob. We would do, work on candidates to find good candidates to run in communities. In doing that work, you might find out if that candidate had done something controversial.
Right.
And, you would inquire around the networks and communities and do maybe a quick media scan. But there was nothing formal at all. And you kind of relied upon your networks in the communities to kind of find some good ones and weed out some bad ones and hope that the nomination process, because remember, most of these candidates are selected in competitive races where local party members choose,
right.
Hope that vetted out the bad ones. By the time the 90s and 2000s rolled around, we realized, I think all the parties realized that wasn't good enough.
And what did they start to do around that time?
Then what we started to do was to first bring in a questionnaire, and all parties did this, that went into their background, their CVs, their bank accounts, whether they had ever had a court case successfully concluded, their criminal records.
Okay, so criminal record, have you ever been sued?
Yep, all
these
that
kinds of
stuff.
things, right? Yeah.
And then the one where I learned my lesson the first time on this was in the 1995 election campaign. The Liberals, we had a candidate running out in Canada who, to be blunt, didn't have much of a chance of winning, but he was running out there, and Ottawa media, right across all Ottawa media, found a publication he had made that had never really he had published it, but it had never been sold in stores or anything. We wouldn't have caught it up. That media characterized in front page news as racist, sexist against just about every group you could imagine.
Oh.
As a result of that, it was called a racist book and so forth by different media organizations. We we then reformed our system to bring in a system where we actually made you disclose every publication that you'd ever made, anything you'd ever written. And in, by the time social media rolled around, and I ran this candidate myself, that included everything you'd ever said on social media. Which could be, in both our cases, Rob, literally thousands of tweets.
Yes.
And then a vigorous interview, a look at whether or not at your credit rating,
like kind of a job interview sort of thing, Richard, with a committee of party people sort of thing. Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And you would get asked questions on your disclosures. And for example, I remember in the last time I ran, I had to provide my credit rating. I remember thinking, God, I wonder what my credit rating is. I hope it's good.
Yeah. And I think the thinking is nowadays, if the party doesn't do that sort of thorough thing, we're going to get into how social media has totally changed things, but and made it even more rigorous. If the party doesn't do that legwork on its own, your political opponents will do it for you, right?
Yeah, that's right. And we each have, to be honest with this, each party will have during campaign times a unit of their team, of their staff, that's totally devoted to opposition watch to see if there are any, kind of bozos in the other campaigns.
Yeah.
And then you will have internally your own operation that tries to pretend to perform that same function on you, to make sure that, if we were opponents, what would we look at in Richard's or Rob's background?
Yeah.
And here's the big tension. The tension is, theoretically, candidates are supposed to be chosen by their local riding associations in a democratic meeting. However, if the Conservative Party of Canada or the Liberal Party of Canada fielded a candidate who had, let's just say, racist views, we, the citizens, would hold the party responsible for that. And when we don't make a distinction between local riding association and Justin Trudeau. If you're stupid enough to nominate someone who's clearly not associated, but not acceptable to the public, we'll judge you on that. And so parties try to control these things the best they can, but it is a little bit of, you can do all the due diligence you want, but there's luck involved. And, sometimes you can do all the work you want and not find out that somebody may have said something sometime.
Okay. So then along comes Facebook and along comes Twitter. Yeah. How has that changed things, Richard?
So in one specific, sort of example, remember what I said a few minutes ago about how we would require you to disclose to us anything you'd published.
Yep.
So we could find out whether or not you'd said anything, incredibly problematic. So now when you're in the world of social media, I don't know, I didn't have a long list of publications and maybe two or three things maybe that I had written over the course of my life. In the course of our lives, we put thousands of images and thousands of comments, and sometimes flip, and certainly not in contemplation that we were ever going to be running for office on there. And so you had to basically disclose hundreds and hundreds of samples of things that you said, and then essentially warrant to the people, kind of looking into your background, that you hadn't said anything sexist, you hadn't said anything illegal, you hadn't said anything against the Constitution, of charter rights, all that sort of stuff.
Right.
So again, it's needle in the haystack, because no one really at the Liberal Party or the Conservative Party or NDP could actually pour through every tweet Rob Snow's ever made if Rob was running to be a candidate.
For example, I was speaking to a local Conservative organizer not that long ago, and conversation turned to this very thing about vetting of social media posts for potential political candidates. And I said, well, how far back do you go? And the person said, forever.
Yep.
From the day they created the account, we want to know. And I just looked. I joined Twitter 9 years ago.
Right.
They're going to go through 9 years of tweets. Say if it was me, but I think about somebody, and we saw this happen in the last election, Richard, and the election before that, where you have young Canadians who are, upstart political candidates. They're in their 20-somethings, 25 years old.
And they're online presence.
They've been online their whole lives. I remember specifically there was a Liberal candidate said something that was deemed to be racist. I believe maybe anti-Semitic. I can't remember. She said it when she was 17.
Yeah, and
right?
So we're gonna. I mean, I think
not allowed to run. Not allowed to run. Had to drop out. Right.
And I think that's wrong in the sense. I mean, obviously, as a society, we're going to have to, come to the realization that we now have a whole generation of people who literally, their online presence started as children.
Right.
And we can't hold a 17-year-old, in the example you just gave, to the same standards of behavior that we hold, Chrystia Freeland or Mark Carney or somebody that, is a star candidate recruited by that's not the same thing. And every one of us is going to have. I remember one time doing a job interview for someone whose Facebook profile showed, let's call it an over-enthusiastic college, a university party. And it came down to the two candidates, and I remember one person was saying, well, maybe that guy's got a drinking problem. And I looked at them and said, I remember the room, and I said, really, would every one of us want photos that may have been taken when we were in first year university held against us in a job interview? I for one admitted that maybe I wouldn't have.
No, I wouldn't. No, not at all. No.
And so that's the same, I think, thing that has to happen with candidates. We're going to have to somehow learn as a society to put into context something someone said when they're 16 versus something someone said last week. And there's no rules that are going to fix that. That's just our own attitudes and what we'll accept, I think.
Yeah. It's extraordinarily strict now and that's before you even run the nomination race, right?
Right. And to be blunt, we hold these people to the standard of perfection in everything they've ever posted.
Yeah.
And most of them then get to Ottawa and get elected and find they're not actually running the government of Canada. They're doing a good job, maybe being an MP, servicing the people in their constituencies.
Yeah.
We're holding them to a standard as if they're going to be finance minister when most of them aren't.
Let me ask you, you've got your ear to the ground. You're pretty tuned in, and we've been talking politics, you and I, for a long time on the radio. Do you think we're having an election soon? What's your sense of it?
I guess it all depends on what the definition of soon is. It feels to me like we're going to have an election this year. I don't think we're going to have an election soon in the sense of the next couple of months. I think the third wave of the pandemic, will slow things down. I think that Canadians probably, before they go off the polls, will want to have a fair degree of confidence that they've been vaccinated or at least had their first shot. And we're still, I think, a couple of months away from that happening. Fingers crossed. But I think all the parties kind of expect we're going to have one this year. So, my Lord only knows it's a minority parliament, so anything can happen any time, and we've got a budget coming up. But if I had to predict right now, I'd predict fall.
In the fall. Okay. Great to hear your voice.
Great to hear yours.
On my show again. It's a great pleasure, Richard. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob.
Yep, talk soon. Richard Mahoney ran for the Liberals in Ottawa Centre back in the day against Paul Dewar, as a matter of fact. Managing Director, McMillan Vantage Policy Group. Be right back. Pat Uguccioni will talk about everything that's been going on at Ottawa City Hall. It's been a very busy week. He's the managing editor. Pat is managing editor of the Ottawa Community Voice newspapers. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
An old-fashioned traditional grocery store. You're going to find a butcher, okay?
You want a steak cut a certain way, you're going to get it. There's flour piled in the warehouse. There's mixers on the floor. There's flour on the floor. The bakery is rented out to Frank Nicolo. It's him and his son come in at night. They mix the dough, they roll the dough, and they bake the dough. It's not the traditional frozen and thaw and put it in the bin, okay? It's made from scratch 7 days a week. It's probably the only bakery left in Ottawa that does that. Then customer service, we're big on that. The cashiers, the deli, you're not, if you ask for something, they're not going to point, it's an aisle number 7. They're going to bring you there, okay? If you have too much groceries out, we'll take it out to your car. You know what I mean? There's nothing we don't do for our customers. And we evolved around our customers. They would come in and say, can you try getting me this? Can you get me this? So that's how we built the lineup we have now, okay? So we have a lot of unique items that someone that came over to live in Canada hasn't seen this particular product, but we sourced it and we have it for them that, like something they used to have as a kid. We have a lot of those unique items, a lot, from like all over the world. And we source it through, distributors in Montreal and Toronto that bring in the product in bulk, and we piggyback off of them. Probably the largest European deli in Ottawa. We sell lots because people buy lots. It's nothing really complicated about that. We turn over a lot of product. We package it properly. We buy, and we're always consistent. You're always going to buy, Cuddy turkey breast, San Daniel mortadella. You're always going to get the same brands. We don't flip back and forth to save 20 cents. It's always the same brands, the last 29 years. Best sandwiches in town. It's simple. It starts off with fresh bread every day baked in the store. Anything that's left over goes to breadcrumbs. So you're getting a fresh bun every day that was baked probably 4 hours before you get here, okay? Not only baked, made, like, mix the flour, roll the dough, proof the bread, and bake the bread, okay? Then all the ingredients come right off the shelves. Your lettuce, your tomatoes, all your condiments, and they're cut up fresh in the deli. Not like the big, corporate restaurant chains that your lettuce comes in shredded in a bag, you open it up and you throw it in the bin. Takes, 2 or 3 days to get here from California. How long is it in the bag? The big difference is like making a sandwich at home and you don't have to do the work. It's really what the trick is, and using the freshest ingredients possible.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News 101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Welcoming back, as we talk about city issues, Pat Uguccioni, managing editor of the Ottawa Community Voice newspapers. Good morning, Pat.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
How you doing?
I'm great. I'm getting my shot on Saturday.
I was just going to ask you, getting your shot on Saturday. Congratulations.
I am at a pharmacy 5 minutes away from me.
Oh,
so
good. Okay.
The system worked for me.
Good for you. You know what shot you're getting?
I'm getting the AstraZeneca.
You're cool with that?
I'm cool with that.
You take whatever you can get, kind of thing, right?
I'm not turning down that vaccine.
Good for you, Pat. Good for you. Okay. So, crazy week in the city, right? Lots going on. I want to start with party parks.
Right.
And how this whole situation started and how it concluded. What do you think about how this all played out, Pat?
Well, I think it's just the way politics is done now. I mean, you sit on social media and you look for the latest, tragedy. I mean, there is obviously an out-of-control party in Mooney's Bay and Vincent Massey Parks, and then all of a sudden there's this sort of policy on the fly. In the end, I think cooler heads prevailed, and they're letting each councillor sort of decide which park in their ward might warrant a fewer hours in the evening. But I reached out to the 4 councillors in the West End that I cover, and not one of them is going to adjust the 9 p.m. Time that was in the motion or in the directive yesterday. So
they always could, I guess, later, but they're not. They don't plan on doing it right now.
I mean, the bottom
nobody
line
parties in the West End.
That's right. I mean, bottom line is they are moving up from 11 p.m. to 9 p.m. I don't think anybody ever I think a lot of people always wonder why parks were open that late anyways, but they have moved it from 11 to 9, and if a councillor wants to move it even further to 8 p.m., they have that authority now. So it doesn't look like any of them, at least the ones that I cover, are going to even move it to 8. So.
Okay, you've confused me again, and I'm easily confused on this.
So, I mean, the bylaw.
I thought the councillor had to request to move it to 9 p.m. Is that
the councillor has to request to move it to. Now you've confused me. The bylaw now says it's 11.
Right.
It can be moved down to as early as 8, but the directive yesterday in the memo and agreed to by all was that they're going to close them at 9. But if a councillor wants to move it to 8, then they can do that as well. So it is confusing. And probably why we shouldn't even have dealt with this in the first place and just enforced existing bylaws.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I guess they seem to be a bit understaffed at Ottawa bylaw to deal with 400 complaints over a few days.
I asked that very question yesterday at the presser with Anthony Demonte, and the answer back is they have only 8 dedicated officers for park patrol. So.
For the whole city.
For the whole city.
Right, we have 200 parks, right?
Right, so, 6,000, 7,000 square kilometers, so.
Okay. This is Ottawa Mayor Jim Watson from yesterday.
Drinking lots of beer and smashing beer bottles is not exercise, and it's not welcome in parks in Ottawa, plain and simple. So if people are going to act that irresponsibly, they should be kicked out at an earlier hour, so they're not causing grief or harm to those people who are legitimately using the parks for exercise because they don't have a backyard or they are not able to bring their kids anywhere else. They want to use that park.
Yeah. It seemed the longer the news conference went on, the more fired up and passionate he actually became on that issue. I don't know if that was your impression of it.
I'm sure you follow him on Twitter and his other social media platforms. I'm sure they're getting lots of calls and a lot of pressure to do something. So this was the reaction. So yeah.
Okay, what else do you think is under consideration right now at the city, Pat?
Well, they had a technical briefing yesterday for city councillors, and a lot of it was discussed. The Associate Medical Officer Health, Brent Mahoney, I guess hinted that there's something coming before the weekend, and that could be what they did over the winter with the outdoor rinks and mandate masks in the parks if distancing can't happen. And they're also going to put these park ambassadors into the parks, but again, resources being the way they are, I can't imagine they're going to be out at all parks. So there's something coming from OPH before the weekend around masks, but I think they're still trying to figure out exactly what the wording of that will be.
Yeah. I took a number of calls yesterday from people who wonder why the parks are open at all. Well, this time last year, they weren't open at all.
And again, great minds think alike. I asked that exact question. Why not just make it simpler and do what you did last March and close the parks, period?
Right.
And the answer you get back is it's obviously a media line that they're trying a balanced approach. They don't want, I guess they don't want the confrontations that they had last year where people will just go and do it anyway. So they're going to put these park ambassadors out. They are going to have, stepped up patrol as much as they can do. But closing the parks is not on, apparently.
Okay. Yeah, let's listen to, this is kind of a new name to a lot of people because Dr. Etches is off this week. She has school-age children. It's the school break, so she's off this week. So yesterday from Ottawa Public Health, it was Dr. Brent Mahoney who said this is the worst the pandemic has ever been in Ottawa.
What I'm going to explain to you is that the situation in Ottawa is the worst that it has been to date during this pandemic. That our healthcare system, if trends continue, will be for the first time at significant risk. That minimizing the impact of that means bending the curve now. And that while VOCs, variants of concern, are an additional challenge with this wave, our individual and collective actions can be effective at bending that wave.
Okay. Bending the wave. He said all all the indicators are heading in the wrong direction. She actually said it was the fifth wave. Let's listen to that. It's the fifth wave in Ottawa, not the
While
fourth.
we typically talk about a third wave, actually this is really our fifth. Admittedly, the first wave last spring, there wasn't as much testing, and so the case numbers are less than they would have been if there was as much testing as there is now. But this is the biggest wave that we've been in. And in recent days, we've been seeing daily reported cases often over 300, when it wasn't so long ago that it was 30.
Okay. So, Pat, go ahead. Yeah.
And the number that really, I think, stuck with a lot of people from that tech briefing was that the numbers of hospitalizations are doubling every 12 days, and those going into ICU is at an even faster pace. So, if you do the math, it's 212 days, and it's 400 over the next, less than month. So that's their big concern.
Okay. I must ask you, because I know you're working on this story. You're working this story right now for Ottawa Community Voice, because it involves your readership in the coverage area of your newspapers specifically. And that's this idea that parts of Canada, Stittsville, are a so-called hotspot. And the accusation from the political opposition and some other folks is that maybe that was declaring that region a so-called hotspot, a COVID-19 hotspot, may have been politically motivated. What do you know about that story, Pat?
Well, it was. I think every single councillor asked that question of Dr. Mahoney yesterday, and he was being polite. He didn't think there's anything nefarious with it. That the province has their list, and the city certainly knows their city better than somebody in downtown Toronto. So. I think a lot of people, think there's something nefarious about it, but you couldn't get the associate medical officer held to say that yesterday. But I have a query into the Canada MPP's office. I'm waiting for a reply as to, what went into that decision, but haven't heard anything back.
Haven't heard from Dr. Fullerton on that one?
I have not.
No? Okay. Thank you, Pat Uguccioni. Great to hear from you this morning. All the best. Stay safe.
Yeah, take care.
Okay, bye-bye. Bye. Pat Uguccioni, Managing Editor, Ottawa Community Voice Newspapers. The Talk Back Hour is coming up next at 750-1310 on The Rob Snow Show on City News.
Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, April 15th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now with some light rain in the region, 9 degrees in Ottawa, also 9 degrees in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. It has been a record-breaking week after an emergency brake was applied by the province trying to halt growing COVID-19 case numbers. Here's City News reporter Erin.
1 week into the latest stay-at-home order, which is yet to make a dent in the destructive path COVID-19 is having in Ontario, records have been breaking every day this week. Yesterday's 4,156 new cases wasn't a record, but it pushed the 7-day average into a record, averaging above 4,000 for the first time ever. The 1,877 people in the hospital, a record. Of those, 642 in the ICU. A record. Of those, 422 on a ventilator. That maintains the record set just the previous day. Happening at 3 this afternoon, the provincial COVID-19 update with Ontario's top doctor. And 1 week into the stay-at-home order, we will see if any further restrictions are coming. Those announcements usually happen on Friday. Tomorrow, the province will release the latest modeling numbers, giving us an idea of where the experts expect the pandemic to go from here and in the coming weeks. I'm Irene Precklett.
Now it is another new record today for the province in COVID-19 cases, with 4,736 additional cases today. Ottawa accounting for 342 of those cases, 74 of them in the Eastern Ontario Health Unit, 8 in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, and 3 in Renfrew County. City News time at 10:02, and now your forecast with weather specialist Denise Andriacci.
An unsettled stretch of weather with cooler temperatures for Smiths Falls and Ottawa. 10 to 15 millimeters of rain expected today, and a little bit of rain expected Friday through the weekend as well. Daytime highs are going to be cooler than we've been used to. It's been a gorgeous stretch of weather the last couple of days, but daytime highs today near 10 degrees.
And right now, some light rain in the region, 9 degrees in both Ottawa and Smiths Falls. Now, this pandemic has been very difficult on the Ottawa Food Bank and its 112 agencies. But its CEO says it's certainly or currently the most difficult period due to the spread of variants of concern. Here's City News reporter Alex Gouge.
Ottawa Food Bank CEO Rachel Wilson says those in food banks are at risk of contracting COVID-19 because of the variants and being classified as frontline essential workers. She tells me the impacts the current situation is having on the food bank and its agencies.
We've already seen 2 food banks having to close because of cases in the last week, and we've managed to go 13 months without a single case in a food bank. So it just shows you that the variants are actually quite concerning, and we're doing everything we can to try and reduce any possible risk.
Wilson says as a way to reduce that risk, the food bank has canceled all volunteering shifts at its warehouse to help keep staff safe. This comes as the food bank saw its largest month amid the pandemic in March, which Wilson says shows there's still a significant need in the city. Alex Gouge, City News.
City News time, 10:04. Conservative leader Erin O'Toole pitching a $20 a ton carbon price for consumers in his party's plan to tackle climate change. The move represents a major policy shift for the party, which has long campaigned to scrap the program introduced by the federal Liberals. 15-page document obtained by the Canadian Press is set to be announced by O'Toole later on this morning, outlining how carbon pricing would work under his party. I'm Andrew Boyle. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
Oh, boy. Yes, you heard that number right. New record-breaking case count for the province of Ontario today. 4,763, including 342 cases here in Ottawa, 3 in Renfrew. For the Eastern Ontario Health Unit, 74. The previous one-day record for Ontario, 4,456 on April 11th. 65,000 tests conducted, a test positivity rate of 8%. Wow, one more number, David, that we should be looking at is the number of vaccinations that we have done in the last, say, 24-hour period. Reported 4,763, a new number, a new record for the province of Ontario for COVID cases. So we have a couple of items in the mix today. Feel free to comment on one or the other or both. And first and foremost, why don't we start with those case numbers? Those case numbers. Okay, given those case counts, what should be done? What should be done? Given the case numbers. 750-1310. We know there's a cabinet meeting today. Ford government is meeting today. And the major item up for discussion is going to be tightening things even more. Would that meet with your approval, given the severity of COVID-19 in the province of Ontario? Should we tighten things up even more, given the severity of the situation? 750-1310, 750-1310. Email, therobsnowshow, ottawa.citynews.ca. My friend Brian Lilly in the Sun Papers had a series of tweets recently. He says the cabinet's going to talk about a curfew. They have a curfew in Quebec, 8 o'clock at night until 5 o'clock in the morning. What would you think about a curfew? Would those hours work? Ford government talking about extending the stay-at-home order, but we have a stay-at-home order in effect right now. We have a state of emergency in effect right now, and we have a record case count right now. So what would extending the stay-at-home order do? Talking about closing down more types of businesses, Brian especially outlined or highlighted, would be a better way to put it, highlighted construction sites, for example. Maybe there's a 2-week closure of construction sites. All of it to be debated by cabinet ministers. What do you think about doing any or all of those measures? If it is as bad as it has ever been, and today's case count number is the highest it has ever been in the province of Ontario, ever. In 13 months of pandemic life. It's never been like that. Should the government, the provincial government, adjust the restrictions and tighten things up even more? 750-1310, 750-1310. And as you heard in our 10 o'clock newscast, at 11 o'clock, it is likely that the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada will announce that the party, as part of its election platform, will have a carbon tax. A carbon tax on fuel. Carbon tax on a liter of gasoline, a liter of diesel, your home heating fuels, your propane, your natural gas. That it would be $20 a ton and go up to $50 a ton. Erin O'Toole has scheduled an 11 o'clock news event. What would you think about that policy from the Conservative Party of Canada, part of its election platform? If you're talked out on COVID, we can certainly get into that. But certainly in light of these case numbers, we have to start with the big news of the hour. 4,763 cases, and it sounds like more restrictions are coming into Ontario with the cabinet of the Ford government, at least going to meet today and talk about more restrictions, talk about tightening things up even more, and a curfew part of the discussion, maybe seriously for the first time. To the phones, I have 2 lines available right there at 750-1310. It's yours if you want it. Stephen in Ottawa. Stephen.
Hey, how you doing,
I'm
Rob?
good, Stephen. How are you, buddy? Thank you for calling.
Well, not too bad. My idea on as far as these restrictions go,
Yes?
I don't know why they just don't do a complete lockdown like they did back last March.
Okay.
You know, like things are so far out of control, you know, with the variants and the case numbers that and myself being on the road, I don't see too much difference in traffic from one day to the next.
Oh, I see. You drive truck, Stephen, do you? Or
No, just a regular vehicle for auto parts delivery.
Oh, auto parts. Well, you guys are all over the place, though, right? Doing auto parts deliveries. I see those vehicles on the road all the time. Yeah, cover a lot of territory. So, but you're saying you don't see a lot of difference in the traffic patterns, right?
No, not too much.
Okay.
You know, like, you can't tell me all these cars that are out, especially now, are Uber drivers.
Right.
You know, there's a lot of people, you know, 1 or 2 people in the car. You can't tell me they're working. They got to be going someplace.
Right. Yeah, like if I said to you, Stephen, guess what? We're living in a province with a stay-at-home order. does it really look like people are staying at home the way you think they would under a stay-at-home order?
Well, one would think so.
Right. Yeah. But you would be in favor of a lockdown that looks a lot like last year's lockdown.
Yes, I would.
Something much more severe. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Unfortunately, I know it's going to hurt the economy and stuff.
Oh, sure. Well, that's and I know we've kind of busted the bank, but that is the role of government. I mean, if we're going to order businesses to close, we're going to order people to be unemployed. That is why government exists.
Yeah.
Right there. Okay. To have their back. Right, and we may have you may have to fire up the CERB printing press again. I don't know, Steve. But I mean, the way things are going, that's the way things are going, Steve. 4,700 cases, Steve, today.
I know.
Crazy.
And it's just getting worse and worse and worse.
Scary, Steve. Right? It's not a 90-year-old with who's on a dozen medications living in a long-term care home. It's a healthy 40-year-old is in the hospital now.
Like, I had my shot about a week or so ago.
Right.
And even still, I wear a mask, wash my hands, keep social distance, you know what I mean? All that sort of stuff. But, I think we need a lot more than just that. We need a total lockdown to get this under control.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. You've got us going this morning here on the Talkback Hour on the Rob Snow Show. James, downtown James. Good morning, James.
Good morning.
What do you think? More strict restrictions? What do you think?
Couple things. I did get my AstraZeneca 2 days ago from my doctor's office.
Yeah,
went very, very well. I did ask him. I said, "Well, how many do you have in the fridge?" And he said he had 1,000. Doses, and the next shipment's in 2 weeks from now. I mean, they're not shipping 100 a day or something. They're shipping, So this whole trope about that Doug Ford's hiding some vaccines.
Yeah, doses and freezers. Right?
So this doctor's working all day, and then he does the shots in the evening, they basically said, okay, well, we need to do 1,000 over the next 14 days. How are we going to do that? And that's how they're there's so many hours per evening, etc. So these vaccines in freezers, well, in the case of AstraZeneca, it's in a fridge. They're actually at hundreds of pharmacies and doctors' offices, which are being used over the next 2 weeks. So, anyways, it's not the vaccine shortages are not caused by Doug Ford hiding them in some freezer in Etobicoke. They're, it's because the Moderna's late, etc.
Okay.
Other point.
Look, the cabinet's going to meet today, and apparently, for the first time, really, Ford's been resisting a curfew. But it's in the mix now. So
you had Dr. Chakrabarty on.
Chakrabarty, yeah.
Excellent guy. He had a series of tweets yesterday, which was interesting about anecdotal stuff about who's in the hospitals, and he said that it was younger people that were essential workers or their family members. People that have a history of not just exposure but heavy, prolonged indoor exposure. Obesity and diabetes or metabolic syndromes are common themes. I'm just reading through his tweet, sorry. So heavier set essential workers. So it was all from not from
right. So if they're essential, they can't abide by a curfew anyway if they're doing shift work.
So
is what you're saying? Yeah, it's
someone who went to home sense. So it was every single one was indoor exposure, prolonged indoor exposure, heavy he called it indoor exposure, and generally the ones that were in the hospital were the higher body mass index and maybe some type 2 diabetes, etc. Right. So whatever they're going to do, I mean, follow. I don't know if that applies to Ottawa or not because we certainly have less factories. But whatever they're going to do, it has to be something that's going to not be kabuki theater. It's something they have to do something which will get at the root cause, as opposed to, making us feel better that we're doing overnight ban and things like that. So I don't know what the answer is, but I think doctors like Chakrabarty and public health. I just think that masking in parks, etc., is not where things are happening. Right? It's essential workers in factories.
Thank you, James. Got to run. Thank you, James. Thank you. Got to stop here. 10:15 is the Talkback Hour, talking restrictions, talking carbon taxes. We are talking because that's what we do during the Talkback Hour on the Rob Snow Show on City News.
So Rideau Rockcliffe Community Resource Centre has been around since 1982, and it's here to serve residents of Ward 13. So our focus is on helping to reduce poverty in this community, as well as empowering residents to find resilience within themselves. So one of the new focuses of our centre is around food programming. So you'll notice today when we go around on a little tour that we have a number of food programs here at the center. So one being obviously our emergency food program, which is really great. So residents can come and access food when they are in need. We also have a number of food-based social enterprises here at Rideau Rockcliffe as well. So one being the Ottawa Good Food Box, another being Market Mobile. One of our new initiatives that started this year as response to COVID is called Good Food on the Move, and it's a click and collect online store, and we have 7 pickup locations throughout the city. More sort of local here for Ward 13 residents, we've also started a free produce market as well. So community members can come on Wednesdays and Fridays and be able to access additional free fruits and vegetables.
Social Harvest Ottawa is one of the social enterprises here at the Rideau Rockcliffe Community Resource Centre. We operate this great urban greenhouse, and our work is not only to grow nutritious and delicious food, but also to nourish communities with community members here in Ward 13 and beyond. The greenhouse is a year-round project. We're a team of 4 employees working here. We have 2 full-time employees and 2 part-time employees. We focus on growing microgreens from late fall to early spring, and hothouse crops in the summertime, such as tomatoes and cucumbers.
The Mission Food Truck we're in our 5th week of collaborating with them to come visit our center, and we just got in on it at the right time. They were looking for new communities to branch out to. They said absolutely. Right now they're funded through donations. They travel around Ottawa and just give out delicious, fresh, hot food to people as well. We have at our center the Ottawa Good Food Box, as well as the Market Mobile. So Ottawa Good Food Box has been around for 25 years, and Market Mobile is a little younger, started in 2014. So they both have the mission and the mandate of making fresh food more accessible and affordable in neighborhoods that lack access to a grocery store. So I think the greatest need that we've seen as a result of the pandemic in our community is people that we maybe have never needed to access our services before, right? So a lot of people have had, layoffs. Maybe they're just not able to work because they have to stay home with their children, over the summer, that sort of thing. So we've definitely seen the need go out, particularly for our food programming, as well as some of our counseling services as well. So it's a heavy time for people emotionally.
Talk back
on the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
So as for vaccinations, how many vaccinations done in the last period? 24-hour period? 105,000. 105,000 done yesterday. 105,430. 105,430. Vaccinations accomplished in, that's province-wide, okay? Email therobsnowshow@ottawa.citynews.ca. Rob, have you been to a golf course lately? No, I have not. Have you been to a golf course lately? It's packed, very limited COVID protocols, drinking and carts allowed. The golf courses should be shut before parks. Go to any golf course. You would never think we're in a lockdown. The one on Blair Road is a zoo. I guess that's the Royal and Ancient Pineview that they're talking about there. Pineview?
Yes, that's right.
Drive by Pineview. You would never think we're in an emergency lockdown. It's way busier. Park is fluffy stuff from the city. We should be shutting down golf courses. This is COVID apartheid.
Apartheid?
Holy cow.
Sure.
Man.
Let's start throwing that
Okay,
word around.
look, for the good of the game, have taken a leave of absence from the game of golf.
And we thank you for that. Right. We do. The community thanks you.
Okay. But David, you played golf recently?
Yes.
Last weekend?
Yes.
Is any of that accurate in your opinion?
No, none of that is
dangerous to play golf.
No, I don't. Golf is, there are more restrictions at the golf course than there are at the city parks currently.
Right.
Mainly, and
they have hand washing stations.
Hand washing stations. There's no contact payment. Everything has to be prepaid online, so you're not coming face to face with any employees.
Like, do you even go into the clubhouse anymore?
Can't go into the clubhouse. The public course I played at a couple weeks ago, they had the front door of the clubhouse closed with a window and a baby monitor to talk to the guy inside. Couldn't go into the clubhouse, not even an open window.
Wow.
And you have to wear a mask at all times until you hit your first tee shot. You have to wear your mask, at least at the course I played at, until you hit your first tee shot. And then once you leave the tee area where people do congregate, you can take your mask off.
So when you're hitting your tee shot, your first tee shot on the first tee, you're wearing a mask?
You're wearing a mask, and then you can take it off once you enter the fairway and leave the congregating area near.
That must have been weird.
Yeah, it's a little weird. But some of the driving ranges earlier in the year were having you do that anyway, so I kind of got used to hitting golf shots, but it's not ideal.
But you felt fine at the golf courses you've been to.
I felt very safe. And on the Quebec side, I would point out that you have to wear your mask for the entire round of golf.
Oh, I couldn't do that.
Tee to green, 18 holes. You can't even outside. You can't go in the clubhouse. You got to wear a mask. So that's my.
Are they renting carts? You can rent a cart.
But you can't share one with someone you don't live with.
You can't share one with somebody you don't live with.
You have to be the only guy in your cart. So it's one person per cart.
Okay.
Club dependent. Okay. So I understand there's some variations there, but generally speaking, that's the lay of the land.
All right. So the Ford cabinet is meeting today, 4,763 cases. Interesting that the modeling briefing from the experts, the scientists that would usually take place is going to happen tomorrow. So maybe they'll do one of those twin briefings, David, tomorrow, where they do the modeling and then the premier will come out and say, folks and friends, I'm sorry to do this to you, but we got to tighten things up. Because there's lots of things up for discussion, like a Quebec-style curfew that we talked a lot about yesterday. Could be fines for people who go into work even though they can work from home. Premier says if people can work from home, they should be working from home. But how would you enforce something like that? Okay, if the worker can work from home, but they're told by their employer that they need to be on the job site or in the office, are you really going to fine the worker for that? Or wouldn't you go after the employer for that? And besides, who is going to go into the office if they can work from home anyway? I mean, just how big of an issue is that? I don't know. Just a gut feeling. I would imagine most people who can work from home are working from home. But there are all sorts of things that they're talking about today. 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. Patricia.
Hey, how are you?
Oh, hanging in there, Patricia, doing the best I can. You know, how are you?
I'm doing not too
well,
bad.
I'm glad to hear that.
I don't really want to see a curfew,
you don't,
especially now that the summer hours are coming.
Yeah.
And people can be outside a little longer.
Right.
I think people are becoming immune because of the noise of the news. And I agree totally that sometimes I'm seeing there's a slacking off of the sanitation measures, the disinfectants. But generally, I think people are have an immunity to all of the same news, just rephrased in a different way.
People are starting to tune it out?
Yes.
I don't know, Patricia. I seem to be as popular as ever.
You're popular. You show signs of common sense. But some of the news reporting,
right.
It's becoming, I don't want to use the word boring,
right.
but it's almost becoming something you can make a joke about.
Oh, really? Okay.
So the figures aren't accurate. The bit about the immunization being stored and secreted and forgotten.
Doses in freezers, yeah.
And like it's the same story repeated in slightly modified ways.
But what, in fairness, in defense of my own industry, Patricia, okay, is there a bigger story than this one? I mean,
you can over.
for example, I threw out, and I have a rather conservative audience, Patricia. I threw out the idea. This is a major policy reversal from the Conservative Party that's going to be announced in a half an hour from now. The Conservative Party is going to announce we're going to have a carbon tax too. And yet every caller on my call screen today, everyone who has called in to my program so far, they don't want to talk about carbon taxes, Patricia. They want to talk about COVID-19.
Well, I think politics has sort of gone by the wayside,
right.
And all we're seeing is reversals, new reversals, changes, and I don't think we have very effective leaders.
Okay.
And,
all right, Patricia.
Unfortunate, but...
Well, look, even though you think the news is boring, I thank you for listening to City News.
Well, we're a little bigger than COVID, and when was the last time you heard anything that was actual news reported on, even on CBC? There's nothing outside of Ottawa, out of Canada, the States, and COVID. There's other countries that have other issues.
Yes.
Bring it in. Let us know how India's doing. How is Africa doing? We know Brazil's bad. Is there any sign of hope down there?
Yeah, well, India's not doing very well now that you ask, but...
yeah, I know.
Right.
I know.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was just my 2 cents worth.
Hey, that's what we do the show for, Patricia. Thank you. Yeah, let's take one more. I'll take one more here before the bottom of the hour. Richard in Ottawa. Richard.
Hey, Rob. How you doing?
I'm good, Richard. Thank you.
I just have a couple things that I'd like to say.
Yep.
When it comes to the restrictions, I just think that people are going up to it. You know, you can put all the restrictions you want. I live in North Indian, right?
I need you to speak up, Richard. Speak right into that phone, buddy, so I can hear you, okay?
How's that?
Oh, much better. Thank you.
All right. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Driving a truck background.
Okay. Yep.
Just two things, right? I think that restrictions are you can say whatever you want, but people have gone numb to them. I don't think it's being receptive.
Okay.
Bike through Britannia Park every day on the last weekend, and it's packed. Underneath the terrace, it's packed. People don't care anymore. You know, they've given up. It's just lip service at this point.
Okay.
And, I feel that we just had a missed opportunity. I know hindsight's cheap, but, instead of worrying about this carbon tax and all this other crap, I think it missed opportunity. We should have put in a fat tax. When COVID struck, I realized that it would affect fat people really bad. So, I made life choices. I've lost 145 pounds, and I know not everybody works for everybody, but I think the OHIP could have taken more of a stance and helped with, turning around people's, habits and, try to make a society change.
Oh, I see. Okay. Instead of having a carbon tax, have a fat tax.
I just, you know what I mean?
Sure. Well, like a trans fat
$42 or,
okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They've shown that outside of the vaccine, a healthy lifestyle, and, people generally do better if they're not, obese or, have diabetes or things like this. And I think it's just a missed opportunity.
Okay. All right, Richard. Thank you. All right. Interesting take there from Richard. We'll be back after the news. It's halftime for the Talkback Hour on the Rob Snow Show on City News.
One for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, April 15th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now, some scattered light rain, 9 degrees in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls. And here's what's making news this hour. More record-breaking numbers in our province for COVID cases. A stunning 4,736 new cases today. Ottawa makes up 342 of them. Eastern Ontario has set their own new daily case number record with 74. There are 8 in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, and 3 more cases in Renfrew. The numbers come from over 65,500 completed tests. The province also reporting an additional 29 deaths. Ottawa Food Bank CEO Rachel Wilson says those in food banks are at a risk for contracting COVID because of the variants and being classified as frontline essential workers. The food bank has seen its largest demand for its service since the pandemic began in the month of March. They have also stopped volunteers from working in the warehouse now to try and protect them from possible contamination. Conservative leader Erin O'Toole set to announce a $20 per ton carbon tax for consumers in his party's plan to tackle climate change. It's a major policy shift for the party, which has long campaigned to scrap the Liberals' carbon pricing program. The document says the price would start at $20 a ton and rise no higher than $50 a ton. Erin O'Toole expected to make that announcement coming up in about a half an hour's time. City News Time, 10:33. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
So just on the carbon tax, because we're going to carry some of Erin O'Toole's remarks live, we'll have a feed for that, right? We will have a feed for that. David, you'll have a feed for that, right? I mentioned the CBC and the National Post that kind of have these competing stories today with Brian Platt, the great reporter for the National Post, saying that the plan from the Conservatives was to scrap the Trudeau carbon tax, consumer side of the carbon tax, what you pay on a liter of gasoline, a liter of diesel fuel, whatever the charge is on a tank of propane, for example, the consumer side of the carbon tax. The CBC story said the Conservative carbon tax would be $20 a ton, going up to $50 a ton, and no more than $50 a ton. So this morning, this is about an hour ago or so, something like 9:19 a.m. Yeah, a little more than an hour ago. Brian Platt from the National Post said, my initial story incorrectly said the Conservatives are eliminating the carbon tax, price levy, whatever you want to call it, on consumer fuels. He said, last night a Conservative source told me the plan scraps Trudeau's carbon tax, but puts a carbon tax on large emitters. I couldn't get more info, but seems clear enough, right? But the source did not tell me they're also adding a new charge on consumer fuels. The reporters at CBC got a copy of the plan that says the new charge goes into a personal low carbon savings account. Now the Conservatives are still insisting it's still correct to say they're scrapping Trudeau's carbon tax because this one doesn't go into government coffers. So if you think the Liberal argument is that their plan is a price, not a tax, it's a bit pedantic and dubious. Gird yourselves now for the Conservative insistence that their new plan is not a tax because it goes into a savings account instead of government revenue. Nevertheless, kind of a watershed day for the Conservatives. Okay, doing the carbon tax thing. They're going to do the carbon tax thing. all to be revealed this morning during an 11 o'clock news conference. Stephen Harper once said carbon taxes were a money-sucking socialist scheme. Stephen Harper is on the record as saying what liberals really want to do is they want to raise the GST, but they can't do it because it's politically unpopular to raise the GST. So they're doing this instead, a consumption tax on fuel, gasoline, diesel, home heating fuel. Money-sucking socialist scheme. Sales tax by another name. But that was Mr. Harper, and he's not running the show anymore. It's O'Toole's party. And when it comes to this issue, Mr. O'Toole and the people around him apparently have come to the conclusion that this party must have a carbon tax as part of any election platform. $20 a ton, maxing out at $50 a ton. And then, quote, this is the CBC this morning, consumers could then draw on those accounts for things that help them live a greener life. Consumers could then draw on those accounts for things that help them live a greener life. And let me tell you, that's always been one of my life goals, is to have a greener life. 11 o'clock for that news conference. The Conservatives go where they promised they would never go. They would never go there, but now they're going there. They're going to have a carbon tax. Mark it on the calendar. April 15th, 2021, the day the Conservatives embraced the carbon tax. Phil in Orleans. Good morning, Phil.
Hi, Rob. How you doing?
I'm good, Phil.
3 quick items.
Sure.
Golf, carbon tax,
golf.
COVID.
Yes, okay.
Start with golf. The area golf courses, thank you for curbing your golf outings on account of trampling of the rough and the forest. 2, carbon tax. That's a tax that we're not going to be able to avoid, especially if Trudeau gets elected again. And 3, COVID. I think construction has to stop.
Okay.
And the bridges to Quebec have to be closed. They have a 4-time more infection rate than the Ottawa area, and I suspect that's where a lot of the cases are coming from. That's about it.
That's about it? Okay, Phil, thank you. Thank you, Phil. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, his comment about golf kind of went over my head, David. Did you? I didn't get that.
He was thanking you on behalf of the golf community for your sabbatical from the game, I think.
Oh.
For the sake of the grounds, the quality of the course.
I'm glad he's got a sense of humor about it. Michelle in Ottawa South. Good morning, Michelle.
Rob, unless you can squeeze 2 doses of vaccine for every Canadian out of carbon, today I could care less about carbon tax.
Okay.
Honestly.
All right.
I didn't want to go so personal, but we've had 2 cases of the COVID in the home. One's just recovering. One is almost towards the end, and I have a high-risk person in the house. So really, my concerns are very much, and my purpose now is to tell people this is really contagious. And when I watched the news this morning, I see that Hamilton has just identified 2 cases of the Brazilian variant. And it says it's more dangerous and it's more contagious for young people.
Right.
And
if it's in Hamilton and they've just found it, it's probably here and we just haven't found it yet, right? So,
listen, it's not a picnic. This is not fun.
No.
And 13 hours ago, the Globe and Mail story about Canada dropped its specific screening requirements for travelers arriving from Brazil. And then it goes on to quote Mr. Trudeau, and it says Mr. Trudeau now is saying Canada already has, quote, extremely rigorous borders.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Did the Liberals change the meaning of the word rigorous?
Patty Haidu, I believe, said yesterday we have the stringent border controls in the world, she said.
Yeah, well, the only thing they can't get across the border is vaccine. and they're opening the door to more variants coming in, and there's less vaccine. It's absolute insanity, and I'm telling you, perhaps I have so much emotion about it because I'm living it. And listen, I am terrified because my high-risk person now can't get a dose until everything is done here. And so as soon as you get tested, which, by the way, kudos to all the people involved because they're fantastic. They phoned the whole time to make sure that the first patient was doing well. A constant check. I was so impressed. And so so you have 14 days after you're exposed to somebody. Well, on day 13, a member of the household presented to, like allergies, itchy throat, just exactly like allergies. Out of an abundance of caution, one was tested, sure enough, positive, right back into it again. I can tell you that I have run this house like Sergeant March here. I've got outside the door of the infected people a table. I've got a shower curtain over the door. I've got, for the people inside, gloves, masks, Lysol sprays, wipes to touch the door, and I'll flush the toilet. They go in, they do their business, whatever, bang, I'm in there with the Javex. We couldn't have been on top of it more, and still it was passed.
Still, it got in there. Yeah,
it was in the house, and so I had all the windows open. We had the warm weather. Dealing with everything else that comes with this. 15 pounds in 2 weeks is an incredible amount of weight.
Yeah.
Now, on a whole different thing, now that I've had my rant, I must say that I have to compliment you, because when the other gentleman said he'd lost 150 pounds at a lifestyle change, I thought, how is nobody mentioning how fantastic you're looking, Mr. Snow?
Very nice of you.
And also, congratulations. I hear you say you were engaged, and I love that.
I am. Yes, I am.
And just a suggestion, would you guys consider getting married in the studio there? Give all of us an event we can attend. And please, can you get me her vegetable lasagna recipe? Because
she makes it. Yeah.
Remember, this all started.
I actually make better vegetable lasagna than her.
Well, I'll take it from anybody at this point. I just, if I can drop weight and look as good as you, then sign me up.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're very kind, and I hope everything works out in your house, Michelle.
Very much appreciated.
I know you. Yeah. Bye-bye. Yeah. Yeah. Know her a little bit. 10:43. Let's take another one here. Lori, Ottawa. Good morning, Lori. Hello, Lori. I'm too busy to wait for people. We'll be right back. 10:44. This is City News.
It was devastating, and it's devastating to all small business, but not knowing where it was going to go. But then the renovation market, as people stayed home, took off like wildfire. And for us, yes, we're very lucky, very fortunate that we were able to turn things around. I think a lot of it had to do with our internet presence as well, that I was, kept working on over years, and then it kind of took off. So that was very positive. But now, no, people are staying at home. We're renovating different markets, whether it's a kitchen or a backyard or your fireplace. They want to cozy things up. So yes, things are extremely busy right now. Right now it's fireplaces, and I think with the snowbirds, a lot of those clients have existing wood fireplaces, so they're looking at inserts. So they want to convert the wood to gas. They don't want to deal with the wood part of it, but they want it clean and easy and efficient, and that's been a major increase in our business. The cottage and chalet market has really increased, absolutely. We see that people, that's their staycation now, is either the backyard or their cottage with their close bubble of family. So there's no question that we've seen a big increase in that area as well. I've seen a change in the backyard because now the staycation, from my past being in the pool business, one of our great clients was in the other day, and he's in the pool business. He's booking for 2022. For in-ground pools, okay? So I think what's happened now is that's brought everybody back home, and I think maybe down the road, maybe 3, 4, 5 years from now, we're still gonna see people spending time in their backyards and staying home more. The barbecue area, really, we call it the backyard. So you walk out of your house into a backyard, and it kind of looks like that with the fencing and the sky and things like that. So that is just our fun room. It's just, there's a lot of cool gadgets there that has to do with dealing with charcoal and wood pellet barbecues. To go online, you're going to find, you just Google, romantic fireplaces will come up. The one nice thing about our work is that when the Google reviews and the Google pictures are phenomenal. We're uploading stuff every day. I have at least 1,000 jobs, real jobs that you can take a look at, either on the Google pictures on the drive, or if you go to our website at romanticfireplaces.com and click on Our Work. It's where we used to load lots of them up, but there's lots of pictures there too. But the great thing about that is they're real. There's testimonials there about people talking about our team. And our team here is unique to everybody else. It's two small teams, but these fellas work for me. They're our guys. So when they go into your home, they care as much about your house as you do.
Time to talk back
on The Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Right back to the phone's final quarter talk back hour, talking restrictions for cabinet meeting today, curfew in the mix. We're talking carbon tax. We're about 15 minutes away from a big news conference from Erin O'Toole. Erin O'Toole going to wrap himself in the flag of carbon taxes this morning. Bill in Toronto. Bill.
Hey, how are you, Rob?
I'm good, Bill.
So I hear you're getting tight and you're engaged?
I've lost some weight. I have lost some weight. I've lost, in the last year and 3 months, I've lost 65 pounds.
Sounds like this COVID thing's working out for you,
It is. Yeah, you know what it is? It is cooking at home a lot, eating real food. It makes a big difference. It's amazing, actually. Yeah.
You know what? Actually, me too. I've become quite the chef in my own mind, and I can eat it, so it's all good.
Good, Bill. Yep.
My lab loves it. But to that last woman, you can't call it the Brazilian. That's just not right. That's like calling it the China virus. We have to get away from that kind of talk.
Well, maybe, yeah, okay. I know that this is a popular opinion in some sections of social media that it is a... people don't have any problem saying it's the UK variant or it's the Brazilian variant or the South African variant, but it has to be COVID-19, right? So, yeah, I understand that. Yep.
Okay. But, and then the other thing is conservatives with tax today. So tax me and then serve me. If I'd have known this was going to happen and they were going to serve me, I wouldn't have saved for my bloody retirement. But anyway.
Right. Okay.
That's not the thing.
Bill, you got a house in Toronto. You've got it made. You're a millionaire on paper anyway. So.
Well, I got a cottage in Muskoka, too. But
there you go. Yeah. So you're a multimillionaire then, Bill, right?
But, I think we're too focused on the COVID, actually.
Okay.
We have to focus on the real problem here. It's the climate. We had 12 years with the crisis to save the world, and 4 years of those have gone by, and we're worried about a virus that kills, 1 out of 10,000 or 1 out of 100,000, and the climate's going to kill us all in another 8 years. I think we need to reevaluate what we're doing.
Right.
We need to shut down.
We need to return you to your regularly scheduled emergency. Is that what you're saying, Bill?
Pretty much.
Yeah,
you know
okay,
what?
Well.
We're on fire, aren't we?
The whole world is on fire, Bill. Thank you. Okay, yeah, again, 11 o'clock, Erin O'Toole, $20 a ton carbon tax on gasoline, on diesel, on home heating fuel, going up to $50 a ton. The funds to be diverted into your, what's it called? The green savings account, the low carbon savings account, to be run by a private consortium, it says in the CBC story, like Interac. Yeah, so I might have like a green debit card, right? Like a low carbon plastic debit card. Low carbon though. Low carbon. I can only spend it on green stuff though. Like bus passes and stuff. Karen, I thought I already have a Presto card for that. Why do I need a green savings account? Anyway, you try and figure it out, folks. My gosh, what it takes to save the world. Karen in Stittsville. Good morning, Karen.
Hi, how are you? Congratulations on your engagement to you
and your fiance. I'm
Thank
so
you.
happy for you both.
Well, thank you.
I just want to say a couple of things. I had talked to one of our politicians, well known across Canada, and I had said to them, I want us to ride the media with $1 billion, like the Trudeau government has given them over $500 million, but they will not do it. And the sad thing about it, I was talking to someone that works for the Senate. She's 30 years old. She's from Ukraine, and because she thought Canada was so honest with the news media, she's been here for about 10 years. She cannot believe that it's as bad as Ukraine, that it's one-sided, that she didn't think it could be. And she said it's disgusting that it's not news. I'm so upset about it because getting it from a person that's from a different country.
So you're saying Trudeau has bribed the media, you're saying, Karen?
Yeah, of course. And the thing is, it's
well, wait,
so
look, why? If that's the case, why am I still coming to work every day?
No, because you're one of the honest ones. You are one of the few honest ones.
Okay.
I even liked Evan Solomon at one point, but before he got his show on TV, now because they're paying him more.
Oh, go away.
No.
Come on.
I am no. And the thing about Trudeau, like you said, he did a good rollout. What about those nearly 24,000 people that have died? If we would have gotten our vaccines, all my cousins in England have gotten their second doses and they're younger than me. Like, it's disgusting.
Oh, yeah.
And he's
Yeah.
proud of the rollout. He's proud of it, he said.
No regrets. He has no regrets. He doesn't regret anything, he said. Yeah,
the
isn't that
media should
remarkable?
be on top of that. What about those lies?
Exactly.
Your children, it is disgusting.
Okay.
And
all right.
You do a good job.
Well, thank you, Karen. Thank you.
I love
Thank you.
listening to you. You're welcome.
Thank you, Karen. Very kind. Very kind. Very, very kind. When Trudeau's bribing the media, right? He's bribing them, right?
Yes. Yeah, we've established that. Yeah.
Like, where are our envelopes? Should we not be getting? This is the classic liberal way: envelope stuffed with cash, right?
Yeah, they've been coming. I've been putting them in your low carbon savings account.
It's in the low carbon savings
to give you a little nest egg in there to get you going.
I see. Okay. All right.
That's where the money is.
I've got to get access to this account. Marie, Ottawa West. Marie.
Good morning, Rob.
Hi,
and
Marie.
Congratulations.
Yeah. This happened like 4 months ago, but I guess the cat is out of the bag now. So, all right.
That's okay.
Yeah.
We're finding out. You know what, Rob? You know I've been around for a long time.
Yes, you have.
I've heard
Marie
many
campaigned for Diefenbaker, right?
Well, yes, I went back then. He was still on the Hill when I was there, as a matter of fact. When I was on the Hill a little bit before that, too. But anyway, with him, of course.
Yeah.
But anyway, you know what, Rob? I think I've heard it all. First of all, O'Toole's not going to do a carbon tax, and then he's going to do this, and now we're going to have it put into the money put into a savings account. Who, in the name of heavens above, has that man got advising him? And how does this man expect volunteers like myself and many others to get out there and promote this? Well, you know what? When O'Toole was elected, I'm having regrets of supporting him, to be honest, and I'm not afraid to say that.
Right.
But when I was campaigning and for him for the leadership, I could almost say 100% that, we're going to win that next election hands down. We're not going to win that election hands down if this kind of stuff keeps up. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And that's all I'm going to say, because if I say two more, they'll probably kick me out of the Conservative Party.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Marie. Yeah. Rodney, you're on the air, my friend.
Hey, I'm on the air with Rob. Hey,
Yes,
and then
you
I'm
are.
going to give you congratulations for both things.
Okay.
For both things.
Yeah.
One for the engagement, and then the other one for David, because he's just sort of stepping up and making some good comments, and
He's the best. He's the best. David runs his whole show, okay? He runs the whole show, and he's going to university at the same time.
And does he have a chair right beside you or across the room?
He bolted out of here. Yes, I've got to go write an exam, he says.
Oh.
Yeah.
All right. Yesterday you didn't get an answer from me for lockdown.
Okay. All right.
It's going to be, the part of me that doesn't want the lockdown because of the inconvenience to me and to others.
Yeah.
But, hey, the realistic part of me that realizes you need a lot more than a lockdown.
And about a year ago on your show, I mentioned, if you didn't want to have COVID, you need to close the airports.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
No interprovincial travel, no intercity travel, no inner city travel. You register.
Shut it all down.
Shut it all down. And, just an example of that you can follow from today is up in Nunavik. They got a total lockdown going on starting today or something. People got to self-isolate if they went to one village for 14 days. You know why? Because they have one COVID case. So they're going to have a better chance of getting rid of the one COVID case from expanding.
Right.
Okay.
So, all right, Rodney. Thank you. You've been pretty consistent on that from the beginning. I have to give you credit for that. You've never wavered from that.
I'm going to make a confession if you want for a moment. A long time ago, like in the early 50s, the contract tracers were looking for somebody that was the source of the disease. And, hey, you're talking to him right now. And from talking to my older brother in the fall, I really figured out it was, the little kid that was getting good at shaking hands of people when they came back to their apartment. But it was the day that I gave out crackers that the contract tracers were actually able to find me.
Okay.
And then it wasn't COVID, but it was typhoid.
All right, Rodney. All the best, buddy. Stay healthy.
That's why I'm taking this very seriously.
I know. Thank you, Rodney. Thank you. Thank you for all your calls. We have another very hot Talkback Hour. Tomorrow during our Talkback Hour, it's the Friday free-for-all. So whatever's on your mind between 10 and 11 o'clock. The news next. And then Erin O'Toole's carbon tax announcement. This is City News.
In Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, April 15th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now, some light rain in the region. It's 9 degrees in both Ottawa and Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news this hour. It's another record-breaking day for the number of new COVID cases in Ontario, with 4,736. There are also 29 more deaths in Ontario. Of the new cases, Ottawa makes up 342. Eastern Ontario has set its own daily case record with 74. 8 new cases in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, and 3 more cases in Renfrew. The numbers come from about 65,500 tests. In response to the potential city park closures earlier at a councillor's request, one member of council has come out to say he will not be closing parks in his ward. Sean Menard for Capital Ward, that area covers the region around the Glebe and Old Ottawa South, wrote on Twitter he will not impose a curfew in those parks. He says he would rather focus on stemming the real problem areas like congregate workplaces, lack of paid sick leave, and vaccines for frontline workers and education staff. City News Time, 11:01, and now your forecast with weather specialist Denise Andriacci.
An unsettled stretch of weather with cooler temperatures for Smiths Falls and Ottawa. 10 to 15 millimeters of rain expected today, and a little bit of rain expected Friday through the weekend as well. Daytime highs are going to be cooler than we've been used to. It's been a gorgeous stretch of weather the last couple of days, but daytime highs today near 10 degrees.
And right now, with some scattered light rain, it's 9 degrees in Ottawa and Smiths Falls. We'll soon be getting an update from federal officials about vaccine deliveries and rollout across the country. But this comes as we get word of more delays. Here's City News Parliament Hill reporter Cormac McSweeney.
Just ahead of this federal update, City News has learned that the Ontario government has been informed of yet another Moderna delay. 500,000 doses that were supposed to arrive in that province on Monday have been pushed back now until May 3rd. Procurement Minister Anita Anand says the issue with Moderna deliveries right now is around quality assurance processes, and the company is trying to address it.
I think we need to remember that this is a company that is continuing to ramp up production, and they are experiencing some bumps along the way.
Minister Anand says most of Canada's deliveries are coming from Pfizer, and talks continue with the U.S. about accessing more doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine, which is sitting in warehouses since it's not been approved in the States. This all comes at a time when hard-hit provinces like Ontario are desperately trying to expand their vaccination efforts. Provincial sources say these delays pose a logistical challenge and could disrupt rollout. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
City News Time, 11:03. Conservative leader Erin O'Toole pitching a $20 per ton carbon price for consumers in his party's plan to tackle climate change.
The move represents a major policy shift for the Conservatives, which have long campaigned to scrap the carbon pricing program introduced by the Liberals under Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. In a 15-page document, the Conservatives say the price would start at $20 and rise to no higher than $50 per ton. The party says its system would be more affordable than what's currently in place, and that it would work with the provinces to create a personal low-carbon savings account. The plan says Canadians would pay into their account each time they buy hydrocarbon-based fuel, and then use that money to pay for products to help them live a greener life, like a bike or a bus pass. Terry Pedro, The Canadian Press, Ottawa.
And defense at the murder trial of former officer Derek Chauvin in the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis has now rested its case without putting Chauvin on the stand, wrapping up 2 days of testimony to the prosecution's 2 weeks. Chauvin informed the court today that he will not testify, saying he would invoke his Fifth Amendment right not to take the stand. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's a pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
So we're following some live news events here. Conservative leader Erin O'Toole on the Conservative carbon tax. That's coming up any moment now. He has scheduled an 11 o'clock news event, running a little bit behind. We've had several reports now. We've heard from the Canadian Press. We've had a clarification from the National Post. CBC had a story early this morning that the Erin O'Toole Conservative Party of Canada carbon tax would start out at $20 a ton. It would max out at $50 a ton, and the revenues would be diverted into, quote, the personal low-carbon savings account. So you could take some of the money that you're dinged, the $20 a ton, you're dinged a few liters, a few cents a liter in gasoline. You take some of that money, you can buy yourself a really nice drink box, water bottle sort of thing. Okay, you got to spend it on green stuff. Quote, things that help them live a greener life. Things that help Canadians live a greener life. And then just about everything that the Trudeau government has put in place will remain in place. But the carbon tax at least for now. If at this point you could even believe anything Erin O'Toole ever says on anything, carbon taxes or any other issue. A Conservative Party of Canada carbon tax would max out at $50 a ton, whereas under the Liberal Party and the Liberal government, it is scheduled to go up to $170 a ton, even though the Liberals long ago promised it would max out at $50 a ton. So a lot of people will have a lot of reaction to this. There were reports suggesting that this was on the way, that it was causing quite a bit of consternation within Conservative circles and in the Conservative caucus. There was a March 2nd or 3rd, I believe, news story in the Toronto Star that said O'Toole was mulling this. And now it seems to be official. The new leader of the Conservative Party of Canada will have a carbon tax as part of the election platform. Carbon taxes at the consumer level, plus carbon taxes on big business. Okay. The flip side of this politically is that a lot of people, and I count myself in this camp, do not think that the Conservative Party will ever be able to outbid the Liberal Party when it comes to being eco-warriors. And that trying to pretend otherwise, it's nothing more than a fool's errand. Obviously, the O'Toole people, they've come to the conclusion, though, that they have to put something in the window for voters. Conservatives have to have something on climate change to put in the window for voters. Now, I think you could also set your clocks to it that by the end of the week, come the the Sunday political talk shows, the media is going to be filled with stories about how this Conservative plan is it's woefully inadequate and it's not up to the task and it's not enough to get us to net zero on carbon emissions. That's just my own take on it. I'm open to being proven totally wrong about that. I suspect the criticism will flow, okay? Even though, really, when you think about the Liberal record, I mean, the Trudeau government has nothing to brag about when it comes to their record on trying to fight climate change. The Liberal Party adopted Stephen Harper's targets on greenhouse gas emissions reductions and then failed to achieve any of the targets. All talk, no action when it comes to cutting greenhouse gases, and this government's been in power for more than 5 years. The latest numbers were just released, the annual output of Canada's greenhouse gas emissions for the entire year of 2019. And they didn't go down. Emissions didn't go down. Despite having a carbon tax, emissions increased again. The government has been in power for 5 years, and it's made a lot of promises, and it's talked a great game. It's promised to build, a lot of windmills and solar panels and plant a lot of trees, but it has never, ever met a single one of its targets when it comes to reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Like I said, they kept the Harper targets and then missed the Harper targets. They went to Paris. They signed up for the Paris Climate Accord because Canada is back. Right? Canada is back. And the Trudeau government made all sorts of fuzzy feel-good promises about the fight of our lives and the climate emergency, declared a climate emergency, returning to the global stage, and it really hasn't lived up to the hype. But one of the beautiful things, I guess, about the Paris Climate Accord is that it's non-binding on every country that's ever signed it. You know, it's not like Canada is punished for missing any of the greenhouse gas reduction targets under the Paris Climate Accord. It's not like Greta comes here and gives us a Thunberg tongue lashing. It doesn't happen that way. It's the old Liberal way. They talk a good game. They say they're going to do great things, speak in righteous tones, and then nothing ever happens until election time, when once again they make a brand new series of promises. And that's not just a climate change thing. You know, it's a child care thing, it's a pharmacare thing, it's a liberal thing. And maybe soon enough we'll be saying, when it comes to climate change, we'll say it's an O'Toole thing as well. A promise that goes nowhere. But nevertheless, in a few minutes' time, we will get an update, we suspect, from Erin O'Toole on carbon pricing, and we'll get some instant analysis and reaction from our friend of the program, Mitchell Beer, who is an expert on all of these things. He follows it very closely. Mitchell Beer is publisher of Energy Mix Productions. Also ahead on the program, Jeff Sonderman is going to join us, Deputy Executive Director of the American Press Institute, and Benjamin Tal, the Deputy Chief Economist at BMO Capital Markets. So we have a very busy hour ahead. Here is Erin O'Toole.
Climate change. It is already impacting our ecosystems, hurting our communities, and damaging our infrastructure. Canada's Conservatives will meet our Paris climate commitment and reduce emissions by 2030 to fight climate change and protect our environment. But we won't do it on the backs of working Canadians or by hurting our economy. Canadians can't afford Justin Trudeau's carbon tax hike, and we must rebuild our economy. Le Canada ne doit pas ignorer la réalité du changement climatique. Il a des effets néfastes sur nos écosystèmes. Il nuit à nos collectivités en plus d'endommager nos infrastructures. D'abord, les conservateurs vont respecter l'accord de Paris sur le climat. Pour lutter contre les changements climatiques et protéger l'environnement, nous allons réduire les émissions de gaz à effet de serre d'ici 2030. On va le faire pour notre environnement, pour notre pays et pour nos enfants. De plus, on va le faire sans taxer les travailleurs canadiens et sans faire fuir les emplois ou les investissements du pays. Canada's Conservatives have a plan that will achieve the same emission reductions as the Liberal carbon tax plan while growing jobs and our economy. We recognize that the most efficient way to reduce our emissions is to use pricing mechanisms. However, having a market-based approach means that we cannot ignore the fact that our largest and most integrated trading partner, the United States, does not yet have a national carbon pricing system. And the present state of global trade allows some of the world's worst polluters to become free riders to the detriment of Canadian workers. Any serious plan must recognize these realities. Pour atteindre nos objectifs, nous allons travailler avec les provinces. Comme je l'ai souvent dit, nous allons avoir une approche de collaboration avec nos partenaires provinciaux, non pas une approche paternaliste. Il faut que le Canada soit un leader en matière d'action climatique. C'est la seule façon d'y arriver. Nous allons réunir les provinces pour discuter des prochaines étapes de l'action climatique. Nous allons aussi discuter de la meilleure manière de travailler ensemble pour atteindre nos objectifs. This is the plan we will put to the provinces as a federal partner. Canada's Conservatives will scrap the federal carbon tax backstop and work with the provinces to implement an innovative and national personal low-carbon savings account. This will maintain a consumer price on carbon, but without 1 penny going to the government. Instead, every time Canadians buy hydrocarbon-based fuel, they will pay into their low-carbon savings account that they will manage and use towards purchases that will help them lower their carbon footprint, improve the efficiency of their home, and live a greener life. That could mean applying the savings account towards buying a transit pass or putting the money towards a new efficient furnace or new windows. It could even contribute towards the purchase of a hybrid or electric vehicle for the family. We will also introduce a zero-emission vehicle mandate based on British Columbia's policy requiring 30% of light-duty vehicles sold to be zero emissions by 2030. And with our national clean energy strategy, we will build a cleaner, more resilient energy grid that will support the growth in electric vehicles and allow more rural and remote communities to reduce reliance on higher carbon fuels and transition to electricity. Nous allons investir dans les infrastructures de transmission pour acheminer l'énergie propre là où c'est nécessaire. Nous allons faire en sorte que notre réseau électrique soutienne la croissance des véhicules électriques. Nous allons investir $1 milliard dans la fabrication de véhicules électriques, y compris dans la production des batteries. En effet, plusieurs matières premières proviennent déjà de ressources naturelles canadiennes. Pour finir, nous allons investir un autre $1 milliard pour développer la technologie de l'hydrogène, mais aussi les véhicules à l'hydrogène. Canada's Conservatives will lower industrial emissions while restoring Canada's reputation as a safe place to invest and create jobs. We will do this by proposing a minimum standard for North America for key industries to the Biden administration. It will be backed up by a carbon border tariff on countries with lower environmental and emission standards like China to keep jobs and investment in Canada. And we will tie Canada's industrial carbon price to that of our biggest trading partners, the EU and the US, ensuring we move towards our Paris targets without losing thousands of jobs to other countries. We will do so while minimizing changes to the output-based pricing system, a system originally designed by the provinces and which industry is now used to. We will improve the clean fuel regulations to reduce carbon emissions from every liter of gasoline we burn. The Conservatives' low-carbon fuel standard will achieve a 20% reduction in carbon intensity based on a similar approach being advanced in British Columbia. And we will implement a renewable natural gas mandate requiring 15% of the natural gas we burn to be renewable. Nous allons faciliter la création des crédits compensatoires pour les secteurs agricoles et forestiers.
Okay, so we're going to get some instant analysis from Mitchell Beer. Mitchell has gone through the entire plan. It's 15 pages long, something I have not done. But Erin O'Toole announcing the embrace of a carbon tax. The Conservative Party will run with a carbon tax as part of its election platform. I did just notice Andrew Coyne, former columnist with the National Post, now with the Globe and Mail, big believer in carbon taxes, who has just tweeted, "I feel disinclined to mock them for now having done so. We can get into the detailed merits and demerits of the proposal later, but this is a gutsy move. This is a gutsy move by O'Toole." Well, we'll see. We'll see if it pays off. It's 11:20. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
We just took over this business about a few weeks prior to the pandemic, but we've been loving the community, the people, very friendly, but it's been very difficult starting up a new business, just the time that we did, but I'm sure it's the same everywhere. We did take a broken business, which doesn't help us, but we thought we believe in what we do. We're very passionate about food, and we just really wanted to share the Iraqi culture through our food. All our recipes are homemade, so this is very unique. Usually you hear restaurants, shops, it's all frozen food or prepared food. So nothing here is prepared, everything is homemade. We get our meat and produce from a local farm. So supporting local is the way to go. We are supporting all the way. And our meat are actually marinated the day of, so it's as fresh as can be. Quality ingredients, and everything is made from scratch. I get a lot of people when they come in, they say it tastes like Middle Eastern, like back home. So for you to have been to Iraq and have the food there, you can really like compare and see the similarity. We do like to focus on healthy. So our recipes, not only the homemade, again, everything is from scratch, but we have like from combos and to like small sandwiches. Our one of our favorites and very popular is the chicken salad and the beef salad. So now you're getting all the protein and all these amazing ingredients that we all need. During this time, I find a lot of people are sitting at home and not enough movement. So to come here and get something healthy other than go elsewhere and just put, what's not so good for our bodies, makes a huge difference. So we have shawarma sandwiches, combos. I mean, if you're looking for a meal to feed your family, I would highly recommend the family platter. It comes literally with everything, with potatoes, with rice, with chicken, with beef, and we don't charge extra for mix. I know a lot of places do. Here we just add everything to your platter. And lots of healthy choices for sure. We're very passionate about food, and for our small family business, it's been good. Like I said, it's a little struggle, but we are not a chained restaurant.
United Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Erin O'Toole unveiling the Conservative Party's climate plan for the next election.
Rise to this challenge. We can secure Canadian unity and prosperity today while safeguarding the environment we owe our children tomorrow. So it's
a big deal. It's certainly a big moment for the Conservative Party. There really is now this promise of a conservative carbon tax on consumer fuels, and I mean, it's a big enough story that they're talking favorably, I suppose, about carbon taxes at all. The pitch will be, I guess, yes, we're having a carbon tax, but it's not as much as Justin Trudeau's carbon tax. And then there's this whole idea that the money is not going to the government, it's going to you. It's going into a low carbon savings account. So that's it. Mitchell Beer is with me now on City News. He is the publisher of Energy Mix Productions. Welcome back, Mitchell Beer. Nice to hear from you.
Nice to be here again, Rob. Thanks.
So what do you think of it, Mitchell?
Well, I've actually seen the document because the big 15-page plan circulated earlier this morning, and I think the top line is that this is not a climate plan, it is not a climate action or a climate solutions plan. It's a plan to deal with a far more important problem for Erin O'Toole, and that is that Erin O'Toole needs something he can call a climate plan that will somehow bridge between the rest of us in the public who expect a government that'll do something about this, and party grassroots who don't believe that climate change is a thing, or at least are not prepared to pass a resolution saying so. It's thin. It's and
okay. Where does it come up short? How does it come up short, Mitchell?
Faster, not slower.
How does it come up short, Mitchell?
Rob, I'm sorry to do this live. I'm having trouble hearing you. If it's possible to boost the sound or shout,
we'll try this. Yep. Is that any better?
That's a bit better, thanks.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
How does it come up short for you?
What they are basically doing is taking the decade or more that the country has spent often needlessly arguing and slowing ourselves down on the details of what a climate plan and a carbon price need to look like. That has finally been settled. It's finally been set aside so that we can get down to action now, so that businesses that are going to be making multi-year investments in the infrastructure that will cut carbon have some certainty so that they can actually make those investments. And what O'Toole's now saying is, what his party is now saying is, we're going to throw that up in the air, We're going to undo the work that's been done. We're actually going to reduce the price on carbon when, to whatever extent the carbon price is part of the solution, it needs to be higher, not lower. And we're going to create another decade of uncertainty so that still nothing happens. And that is not the kind of climate action that the country needs or that the majority of people in polls are saying they expect.
Okay. Would it achieve the near-term targets for greenhouse gas emissions reductions, and do you think it would ever come close to getting us to net zero, for example, by 2050?
We're seeing a really interesting shift in those targets right now. It remains to be seen what the government comes up with over the next week. But there is, you were pointing out earlier on the show, and it's absolutely right, no Canadian government has ever hit a carbon target. And they're behind on the 30% by 2030, which the current government inherited from Stephen Harper, and they were very clear at the time that that was going to be the minimum, not the maximum. It was going to be a floor, not a ceiling. But now there's a new administration in town south of the border, and U.S. President Joe Biden is under sustained pressure from, I believe it's 310 major corporations in the U.S. to declare a 50% target by 2030. Not out of the goodness of their hearts, but for the very pragmatic reasons that, first of all, climate impacts need to be dealt with, and secondly, that there are massive job and business opportunities in the transition. We're talking more than 65 million jobs worldwide that could be created by 2030 if we get this transition right. So I heard Mr. O'Toole refer to the fact that we need to remain competitive with our biggest trading partner. Our biggest trading partner is not only on their way there, they're back in the game on climate change. And they're engaged in intensive diplomacy to try to get many more countries engaged as well. So if we're moving backwards, well, they're moving forward, and we're not aligning with the regulations and the cost savings that they're achieving, we're the ones who will be left in the dust. And that's where a reduction in the carbon price and this fiddling around with the regulations for another round of years, that's where that'll leave us.
Thank you, Mitchell Beer, for your instant analysis for us this morning. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Okay, bye-bye. Yeah, Mitchell Beer, publisher, Energy Mix Productions here in Ottawa. Coming right up, trust in the media. Big issue. And there's a new study out from the American Press Institute, and the Deputy Executive Director at that organization, Jeff Sonderman, will join us. This is The Rob Snow Show on City News.
one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, the 15th of April. Good morning. I'm Sarah Buchan. Right now in Ottawa, we've got showers and 9 degrees. It's cloudy and 10 in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news right now. A record high, 4,736 new cases of COVID-19 in Ontario, and 29 more people have died due to the virus. Provincial health officials reporting 342 new cases of novel coronavirus in Ottawa, 3 new cases in Renfrew County, and 74 new cases in Eastern Ontario. The Leeds Grenville Lanark Health Unit reports 13 new cases, 10 of those in the past 24 hours. Public Health Ontario reporting hospitalizations at 1,932. There are 659 patients in intensive care in hospitals across this province and 442 patients on ventilators with COVID-related illness. Quebec is reporting 1,513 new cases of COVID-19 and 15 more people have died in that province. 4 of those deaths in the past 24 hours. There are 167 new cases of novel coronavirus in the Outaouais. Health officials in Quebec say hospitalizations are up slightly and the number of patients in intensive care have risen as well. Canada's vaccination effort remains well behind the United States, the UK, and several other countries, even as its pace picked up significantly over the last month. Canada's procurement minister says the first priority remains getting doses into the arms now, but Anita Anand says she's also planning for next year. Anand says she's negotiating new vaccine contracts to nail down supplies of booster shots, which many experts have said will likely be needed. Most of those talks will still require Canada to import vaccine made elsewhere. I'm Sarah Buchan. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
There's a major study that's been done by something called the Media Insight Project, which is a collaboration of the American Press Institute, the Associated Press, and ORC Center for Public Affairs Research. And it reveals a new way of looking at the issues of media trust. And we know that there's a deficit. How many times do I hear callers? Oh, I heard it just today. Callers to this program saying, Rob, I just don't trust the media. I don't trust what's going on in the media. Justin Trudeau is bribing the media. So how do you fix something like that? How do you find avenues to address a trust deficit in the media? Let's explore that right now with the Deputy Executive Director of the American Press Institute, Jeff Sonderman. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob. Good to be with you.
Well, it's great to hear from you this morning. Well, how would you describe, first of all, here's a rather open-ended question, the trust deficit in the media? What is it? What is it?
Well, it's something that's been around for several decades now. There's long-running studies that track this, and there's been a slide really since the 70s in what people say when you ask them, do you trust the media? Do you trust the people who produce the news? And so it's been a long phenomenon and something that we've been studying for a while at the American Press Institute as we try to help news organizations overcome those gaps. And increasingly, I think what the phenomenon that you're seeing here is not just sort of that people worry that journalists get specific facts wrong or are sloppy in how they spell somebody's name. Right. It's not that kind of trust about the accuracy of a specific thing. It's more this trust of like, do you come from where I come from? Do you see the world the way I see the world?
Are your values my values, right?
Right. And that's really what this newest study tried to probe in some interesting new ways.
Yeah. And one of the findings it's looking at how Americans view their media. I don't know if Canadians would be all that different, but what you found is few Americans fully embrace core journalism values. 5 of them. 5 core journalism values. What are those values, the 5 values?
Right. So, most of the people, I myself and the people who worked on this study and work here at API, we are journalists by trade. We've worked in journalism organizations, and we also gathered a group of journalism leaders from different organizations around the country to define these 5 values that sort of underlie how journalists do their work. And these, we nicknamed them to shorten them. So these are things like oversight and transparency, which means people in power need to be watched over and the decisions they make need to be transparent. We need to see what they know. Factualism, which means it's better if people have more facts available to them. That's a good thing. It's important to do social criticism, which means to point out the flaws in society, and to give voice to the less powerful, to amplify people who are not in power and don't usually have a prominent public voice. Those are 5 things. There's more, but those are some of the 5 that I think most journalists would agree are sort of good ideas that they try to serve in.
This is what should guide us. This is what should guide us as being journalists.
Right.
Provide people with the facts, give voice to the less powerful, monitor the powerful, put information out in the open, and then spotlight what's not right. And when you put it to Americans, do you share these values? What do you get back?
Well, in all, we found only 11% of all Americans fully support all 5 of those things. And that group, that 11%, is predominantly liberal. So it's not a large amount. There are some people who support some of them and not others. It's not universal. And what we think is really interesting in this study is that what explains that support or lack of support is a relationship to the moral instincts, the foundational moral values that people hold or don't hold. It's not so much just political party belief or ideology or where they're from. A lot of these things connect in interesting ways to these moral foundations that people have and really seemingly can't change.
You have identified a group that you call journalism supporters. And it's a small number who would fit this description, according to your research, journalism supporters. But nevertheless, we'll take them where we can get them, okay? Who are they? Tell us, who are they? What are they about? Why would you describe them as journalism supporters?
So this is one of 4 groups. There's 3 others, but this is certainly an interesting one that we find when we divide up all the people we talk to into groups, basically where 4 groups where the way they feel about these journalism values and 5 moral values are similar. So this group sort of emerges from how they answered the questions. And the journalism supporters, it's only 20% of the people, so this is not a huge group. But these are people who place a very high importance on moral values of care and fairness, which means caring about other people and making sure that everybody has a fair shot in society and is treated fairly and equally. They have the strongest support for all of those 5 journalism values among any of the 4 groups that we're talking about. And it's the only one of these 4 groups that is sort of primarily made up of one political party, which in America is the Democratic Party, or the more liberal-leaning ideologies.
Okay. Then there is another group that you call the upholders. Who are they, and what do they want to see in their journalism?
Yeah, so the upholders is about 35% of Americans. It's a bigger group than the journalism supporters. And these are people whose moral foundations are strongly tied to values of authority and loyalty. And by that, we mean respect for authority and the necessary role that authority plays in maintaining social order and thriving, and loyalty to tradition and respect for the history of a community and the people who have been here for a long time and those kinds of things. So those are the moral values that more strongly ground this group of upholders. We find they have less support for those journalism values. And for the importance of those things, but they do follow the news very frequently. So these are not people who sort of don't want the news because they think it's tainted. They actually follow news very closely, but they have some fundamental disagreements with what's important and what the news should do for people.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I know a lot of those people. They follow right. They follow the news very closely. But they are. You used the word reservations. I would say I would even go for. I would say that some of them are deeply suspicious about what they hear on the news. That there's another motive at work there. Jeff.
Right. And so this is, this is really what we think, what set us on this path to research this is you hear, and I'm sure in your work you hear this a lot, you hear accusations that are something like the media is out to try to help liberals get elected, right? The media has this agenda.
Yep.
And journalists will respond sort of bewildered and say, well, look, there's no smoke-filled rooms here. There's no deals being made. We're just trying to do our jobs and be independent and, and serve these values of oversight and transparency and whatnot. And so we wanted to be able to explain what's happening here. How can both of these groups be sincere and bewildered at the same time? And what we find there is, part of what's happening is when journalists say, we're just doing our jobs, the problem is many people harbor doubts about what that job should actually be and the value of the job they're doing.
Okay. So how, and I know your study looked at this, how to rebuild trust in journalism and still adhere to those core journalism values. What are some ideas there?
Yeah, there's a couple implications. And one of the things we did in the same study was we actually took some news stories, some real and realistic news stories, and changed them. So we took stories that would traditionally speak to the care and fairness and more sort of liberally aligned values of journalism supporters. One of those, for example, was a story about a recreation center that had been planned to be built in a low-income neighborhood that now the news was could no longer be built because of a misuse of city funds by the park director. So the scenario was basically this low-income neighborhood would lose out on their recreation center, and that would be unfair, and that would not care for their needs, right? So speaking to care and fairness.
Yep.
We changed that story. Same facts, all the same information contained in it, but we changed it to emphasize the fact that the city parks director intentionally defied the orders of the mayor, diverted city money from a key project to businesses owned by his friends and family. Emphasizing different facts that speak more to the violation of authority and loyalty to the community.
Right. That this person, Jeff, was in a position of trust and broke that trust.
Exactly. Yeah, violated that public trust. And making those changes doubled the approval rating among these people, sort of the upholders that value authority and loyalty. Same general content of the story, but when you present it that way, it was twice as well received by those people. And importantly, I think at the same time, no drop off in support among the other groups of people, among people who care about care and fairness and those values. They also felt that story was more balanced and trustworthy at the same time.
Really interesting. Very interesting work that you're doing there. Thank you so much for taking the time today. It's greatly appreciated. Hope we can speak again.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Rob. Have a great day.
Jeff Sonderman of the American Press Institute. He's Deputy Executive Director there. Joining us from D.C. today, 11:45. When we come back, we'll get an economic snapshot with the Deputy Chief Economist at CIBC Capital Markets, Benjamin Tell. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
Here at the Thirsty Maiden, we offer a variety of products. So everything from breakfast items, so it's breakfast sandwiches and scones, which have become a staple item here at the cafe. We have an assortment of pastries and cakes and desserts. So we're really big on our dessert bar, which a lot of people come here for. And of course, our delicious coffee beverages. So we do offer not your typical lattes, things like a chocolate banana coconut latte, cinnamon coconut, which is my favorite, and our take on even a pumpkin spice, which we add nutmeg and a dash of cayenne in just to give it a bit of a kick. When you start a business, you don't factor in all the things that could go wrong. You think anything that goes wrong, any failure, is got to be something on your shoulders. You didn't market right, you're carrying the wrong products, you didn't price your items correctly, all the things, right? But when this pandemic began, things going through my brain were I didn't factor in a pandemic. And we were just starting to grow. We were about to blow up, and I think I spent 2 days crying. And then I shut my business down for, I think, a period of 2 or 3 days. And just being at home during that time, I realized this is not me. Anybody that knows me knows I'm a hard worker. I don't give up, and I'm a go-getter. And I started to think, well, I should probably just start clearing out my freezers and posting and seeing who wants to buy what. And that was sort of how I built my momentum back up. I realized that there's still a large number of people that wanted to support us and were looking for the items that I had to provide. So we started there. Then I reopened literally not even 3 or 4 days after I'd closed my doors, and then started doing curbside pickups and deliveries, started doing the deliveries myself, free deliveries to the local community, going as far as Bell's Corners and Carp as well. And that's why we're still here. This community has really kept us going a year into the pandemic. We've had a changeover of staff a couple times now, and situations change, and when you can't offer hours and hours for your employees, you don't blame them when they have to go elsewhere. So I think that's also been one of the challenges is recruiting, training, and then they leave, and then bringing in more people and recruiting. And anybody in this industry will tell you that that's something we deal with on a regular basis, whether or not COVID's in the mix or not. But more so now, because every time there's a lockdown, there's a risk of, will we make it through? And then you lay off more staff. And again, their situations and their circumstances change.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
So we've all heard about the cash hoard that Canadian consumers are sitting on because they've had nowhere to spend money because of the COVID-19 situation. And that once things return to normal, and hopefully someday, sooner rather than later, the pandemic is behind us, consumers will be out spending like mad, and it'll be the roaring 20s all over again. So that's the consumer side. What about business spending? What's the situation with Canadian businesses? There's a new report out from CIBC Capital Markets, and Deputy Chief Economist there, Benjamin Towle, joins me this morning to discuss it. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, hi, Benny. It's very nice to hear from you again, sir. So you say that households are not the only ones swimming in cash. What is the situation with Canadian businesses?
Yes, as you know, as you indicated, the narrative until now is that households, consumers, are sitting on this mountain of cash. We estimate roughly $100 billion of extra cash sitting on the sidelines looking for direction, waiting for this green light. We look at businesses and we found that they sit on more cash, $130 billion of excess cash, sitting on it, basically doing nothing with it. As Mark Carney back then said, basically dead money. And the question is to what extent they will spend that money, because we are counting on this consumer to spend like there is no tomorrow in the second half of the year when we have the green light, hopefully. And the question is to what extent those businesses also will start spending this extra cash.
And what do you anticipate those businesses will do?
I think they will spend less than the consumer for two reasons.
Okay.
One is CIBA. Remember CIBA? CIBA is the Canadian Emergency Business Account, basically a loan that was given to many businesses since the beginning of the crisis. Today it's up to $60,000, and if you pay it back by December of 2022, you get up to $20,000 as a grant. So we know that many companies, need it or not, took this money, put it on their checking savings account. They will pay back part of it by the end of next year, and they will keep the $20,000. So which means that some of this money is not theirs. It's actually the government's. they will have to pay back. So the cash position is actually going down. Another factor, which is very interesting, we look at the sectors that sit on this mountain of cash, and what we found, unfortunately, is that the sectors that don't need to invest have the money, and the sectors that need to invest don't have the cash. So the distribution is not optimal in this environment.
So you have, we have an economy that you have certain sectors within the economy that have been ravaged. Hospitality and tourism, for example, would be one, right? Restaurants, hotels, that kind of thing. But then you have other industries that have not suffered the same way.
That's exactly it.
And the ones that haven't suffered are the ones with the money.
That's exactly the point that I'm making in this report. As you know, this is the story. The story is that this crisis has been extremely abnormal, asymmetrical, the most asymmetrical recession in Canadian history. We know that the damage is very deep, but also very narrow. Namely, if you are deeply impacted by it, you feel the pain. If you are an airline, if you are a hotel, you feel the pain. But the number of industries that are impacted is much smaller than in any other recession. Therefore, the impact is also very narrow. So 2/3 of companies are sitting on excess cash, but 1/3 really need the cash, but really they don't have it. And that's more or less the story. And that's why I think that the propensity to spend that money will be different than what you see among consumers, where the majority of this excess saving is actually held by people with high income, and they will be spending that money.
Yeah. I know, Benjamin Tal, you watch the news as much as anybody else. You read the news as much as anybody else. You know what's going on with the virus and where we are with the third wave and the vaccination rollout. And the news has not been good. It's not encouraging, right? The current state of the virus, with infections, 4,700 today in the province of Ontario, new record. Is the current situation with the virus, is it giving economists pause as to their forecast for the second half of the year, now that we're in the second quarter of the year?
I think that it's definitely making us more negative on the spring. May might be a negative quarter in terms of GDP. June might be the case as well. We still believe that the second half of the year, the summer, will be relatively strong. We are moving in the right direction, but clearly any optimistic forecast about the spring now is not realistic. We are going to see a negative economy in terms of economic growth in the next month or two, because we are shutting down the economy, and it's going to be significant, unfortunately. And many small businesses, Rob, are telling us, you can shut us up once. Don't do it twice. And that's exactly what we're doing now, unfortunately. And that will lead to some pain and some, quite frankly, increase in business bankruptcies. So it's going to be difficult the next 2 to 3 months, but I think that the narrative of the second half of the year, especially the last quarter of the year, around September, October, I think is still very, very positive. This money will be spent.
Right.
These variants are simply making it a longer journey.
Okay, so let's say the consumers of Canada have $100 billion in excess cash. They can't wait to spend it. And then businesses are sitting on an estimated $130 billion in excess cash. So that's, cheapers. It's almost $250 billion, okay, which is probably more than 10% of GDP. Do I have that right for Canada, right?
You got it.
Okay. So Monday is budget day, right? With and it's not expected to be the most austere of budgets, to say the least. Given all this excess cash that is just sitting there waiting to be deployed, is this an economy that's really going to need a kick in the pants with another $100 billion on the fiscal side?
That's the big question that the finance minister is struggling with. Basically, do you want to accumulate another $100 billion of debt when the consumer and to an extent even businesses will be spending some of this money, and you will get private sector stimulus? That's the big question, because eventually we'll have to pay down this debt. Mm-hmm. So I think that the elegant solution to this is to invest and spend, if you want to invest and spend, in something that will create economic growth. For example, universal daycare system. This is not a social program. This is an economic program.
Okay.
By doing so, you actually improve the ability of the economy to grow. You increase the potential growth of the economy by allowing more women to participate in the labor market. To me, that's an investment. This is very different than providing, let's say, income supplements to individuals. So hopefully the job market will go back to semi-normal by the end of the year. But what I need to see and what I would like to see is the government spending on productivity-enhancing measures, long-term thinking, as opposed to just replacing income.
Okay. Thank you for your time this morning, Benjamin Tell. Always great.
A pleasure. Thank you.
Benjamin Tell is the Deputy Chief Economist at CIBC World Markets. So what do we have? About a minute left here in the Rob Snow Show. So the noon news is coming up, and then it is the Mark Sutcliffe right after our noon news. We will be back tomorrow right after the 9 o'clock news with all the usual Friday fare. Lowell Green will be on the show tomorrow around 9:15. My friend Pierre Bourque will be here from Bourque News Watch. And as well, special guest on the program. I actually talked to him yesterday. I mean, how can you turn down an interview with a band that's kind of like been part of your entire life and certainly part of the soundtrack of your youth? I had a chance to speak to Greg Keeler yesterday, who is one of the founding members of the iconic Canadian rock band, alt country band, Blue Rodeo. It's Jim Cuddy and Greg Keeler. They created Blue Rodeo. And Greg has a new album coming out, goes on sale tomorrow. It's called Share the Love. And so we kind of talk about his new album, what it's like to create a new album during the pandemic period, and what it's like to be in the music industry right now. It's not a lot of...
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV.